Well, well, well. Congratulations on getting this far. But if you want a meeting with him, you'll have to get through all these guys first.
Bring 'em on. I only need 3 minutes to take them all down.
3 minutes? Fine. 3 minutes it is.
The white-haired girl struck the man next to her furiously, and so the horde of vampires readied to swarm her. 10 years ago, people who could transform into vampires began to appear. Ever since then, these morphing vampires have been slaughtering people while hiding their true identities. Society had turned into a waking nightmare, and for the sake of everyone she loved, she was going to put her life on the line. We turned to some construction workers harassing orphans of a church. They needed the priest to sign off on their work that kept getting held up because of him. Then, suddenly, a masked woman named Hyon Park came running to throw filthy water at them to leave. She ended up in a precarious position, but fortunately, a red-haired man would interrupt them, asking where the nearest police station was, because he was threatening to throw them in the slammer. The men ended up whispering amongst each other and running off with the "we'll be back next week" like the losing dialogue of typical villains. Hyon then thanked the man and offered to show him how he could get to the station, but was surprised to learn he already knew where it was. She's lived in the church-run orphanage since she was 10. Because the neighborhood was run down and about to be gentrified, these kinds of incidents were common. What happened earlier was no big deal for her, since living here had toughened her up. But something she did struggle with was being the biggest loner on her college campus, mostly because she missed orientation. She didn't know who was in her major and had to say hi to everyone on campus because of that. She even ate lunch by herself and felt like she was going to end up dying alone at this rate. Passing by on the bus, viewing a neighborhood next to her own, she was horrified, viewing the crime scene of a woman who had been bitten and killed by a vampire. The news on the bus blared as the reporter questioned where vampires came from and how no one knew if it was a mutation or if they've always existed and they just didn't know about them. But what they knew for sure is that vampires lived among us and only showed their true forms after dark. Hyon sat at a restaurant where her schoolmates basically drank and played games for 2 hours straight, although she still hadn't talked to a single person from her year yet. Instead, just smiling awkwardly when her eyes would meet theirs. She tried looking on the bright side, staring at the drinks, thinking maybe she and the other students would feel more relaxed and make friendships after getting drunk. But quickly found that pointless, because even drinking dozens of bottles, she just couldn't get intoxicated. Her plan to make friends was foiled yet again. Jang, a senior student known as the best drinker on campus, offered a challenge to everyone at the table. Losers of his drinking challenge would have to show off a talent during their start-of-year trip. Hyon decided to take him head-on, because of course, alcohol was equivalent to water for her. This earned her the attention of some of her classmates, telling her that her name was pretty since Hyon meant white. They got her number and invited her to future study and karaoke sessions in the evening. After a lifetime of being friendless, Hyon was finally able to make some. Giving a toast, the sirens wailed, signaling it was time to head home to avoid the dangerous vampires. Nim decided to walk Hyon back, making her feel awkward, having heard he was a popular senior, and wondered if he might be into her. Surely not, though, since it was only their first time meeting. She then spotted one of the construction workers from earlier hounding another civilian, and as the worker was about to start punching the other man's head in, he found the tables had turned because his own body was pierced instead. The man he was trying to harass was a vampire. Nim then made a run for it, leaving Hyon behind. The vampire then started approaching Hyon as she desperately searched her bag for the thing Father Michael gave her. However, the man would tell her crosses and garlic were useless. They didn't actually work. With her back against the wall, he told her there was no need to be scared, because vampires were once human too. He flexed his might, punching a gaping hole in the wall as a way to promote the gift of strength vampires received. A gift he wanted to bestow onto her. He pulled her by her hair, and going for a bite, Hyon quickly grabbed him and blew his head off. She couldn't believe it happened again. She was trying to tell him not to come near her because she's been a vampire since birth. She hopped on house rooftops, jumping impressive feats, Arriving back home, she quickly found the crown she'd been looking for, and placing it on her head, she transformed back. Her transformations were usually dictated by her emotions, and if she got caught, she could kiss her school and normal life goodbye. At school, she was approached by Professor Dongyu. He was a man who graduated from their department and became a professor this year at a young age. He was very dedicated to his work, having memorized all his students' names, and even gave up his free time to speak to students on days he didn't teach. He was a legend who was able to get a scholarship while holding 3 jobs and struggled financially because he'd been raised by a single mother. But now, things were looking up, and he was even going to be a father next month. Hyeon really respected this man and wanted to be just like him. After class, Hyeon's new friends couldn't believe Nim had abandoned her last night. They brought up how supposedly 1 in every 10,000 people was a vampire, and this made Hyeon start sweating bullets. Passing by other students, Hyeon overheard them talking about how a vampire murdered a whole family in Busan. People were scared. People wished the vampires would just drop dead. People called them monsters. And all that made Hyeon reflect on her past. The orphanage caretaker and priest, Father Michael, often told her not to get too close to people. Since she was always alone, picture books were her only friends. She prayed every day for a real friend she could talk to, and thought maybe her prayers were heard when she had met a passing student who tried to chat with her. He was actually jealous she didn't have to go to school, because he didn't want to have to go at all. He didn't have any friends there, and asked her to go to the library with him sometime. From then on, they met up every day, and she was grateful to him for that. When she was with him, she even managed to forget she was a vampire. Then, sometime later, she realized this happiness wasn't meant to last. The boy eventually became the subject of bullying, and the two started meeting less after, and eventually lost touch. She got so angry because she wanted to help him. One day, when a bully was about to smack him, she grabbed the bully off and threatened him by destroying a wall with her bare fist. Then, going to check on her friend, he trembled out of fear, begging her not to kill him. She'd get knocked out of her daze by the infamous super senior, Byung-soo, bumping into her. She felt something was off about him. He was apparently known for having a screw loose, and even caused trouble at other schools. Every time he went out to drink, he beat up his classmates and extorted them for money. He smoked in the lecture halls, and was also friends with Professor Dongyu since high school. They couldn't believe the two men were so different. But lately, Byung-soo's face seemed more pale these days. He was annoyed, because no matter how much water he drank, his thirst never seemed to quench. He happened to pass by some students who spoke in hushed whispers that he had entered their college 9 years ago. He was a super senior who was 28 years old. And being deeply insecure about that fact, he only imagined everyone around just mocking him. He wondered if they knew he wasn't able to get a job, and bet they were secretly laughing at him for that. And the fact he was unable to graduate at his age. That didn't matter now though, since he'd received his gift. Dongyu then came by to get into his car, saying hello to his friend, who he hadn't seen in a long time. Byung-soo didn't return the feelings of endearment towards Dongyu though, thinking the professor was a fatty and an eyesore. As Dongyu was attempting to drive off, Byung-soo only imagined Dongyu insulting him for being a washed-up loser who wasted his life, and decided to flip the car over. Byung-soo wasn't going to let anyone think they were better than him anymore, and went for Dongyu's life. In the Department of Social Welfare Student Union room, the students discussed how Byung-soo had been put on a wanted list. They were also sniffling over the death of their beloved professor. But Hyeon was fixated on a particular locker, the locker that Byung-soo had been hiding in the entire time. Byung-soo thought about his parents scolding him for freeloading off of them still, especially since he was almost turning 30, and how all his friends kept their distance because he was perpetually unemployed. His solution now was to simply kill everyone. He opened up his class, where he was going to kill his classmates, but found it empty. Turns out, they'd all been given notice that today's class was in a different location. This was set up by Hyeon, now asking Byung-soo why he killed her professor. He responded that Fatty had an inflated ego, and he should have known his place in life. She gritted her teeth, knowing Dongyu didn't deserve to die just because Byung-soo felt inadequate. She told him to turn himself in, and apologize to Dongyu's family. But to this, he just slugged her and sent her flying. not expecting her to suddenly appear behind him. He didn't care though, deciding to punch her over and over, explaining a vampire's strength doubled from when they were human. So a little girl like her should be nothing to a man like him. However, she'd come out of the rubble completely unharmed, and he found that punching her only bloodied his own hands. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain, and Hyan transformed, striking him so intensely they were now in the air, where she told him to die right before she slammed him into the ground. Watching his body fade away, she sighed, thinking about how he begged for his life, just like her old friend did. The next day, the police force was frustrated, trying to investigate Byung-su's clothing with no corpse. They joked that perhaps an exorcist must have zapped him away. However, the red-haired man, known as the Demon, would interject. 28-year-old Captain Un-tae Hwang graduated early from the police academy. He had an amazing memory, never forgetting anything he's seen once. And since the Vampire Task Force was created, his arrest rate was over 80%. He distinguished himself with his groundbreaking arrest tactics and was awarded a national medal of the highest order at a young age. His list of achievements were endless. They called him a demon because he was so good at hunting vampires. His colleagues assumed a couple of vampires had gotten into a fight, but with him seeing the crushed wall of a building, he could tell it was actually just a one-sided beating. He didn't believe the killer was an average vampire. Elsewhere, a student was shouting in protest that the school needed to do something to protect them, and Hyan felt she should be more careful in the future. That's when Un-tae came up to her. Her friends whispered, asking if he was her boyfriend, or maybe some billionaire. But she remembered him as the man who helped her out the other day. Introducing himself, he rambled about his list of achievements, where she managed to catch on that he worked as a detective. Walking together, the students around spoke about how hot he was, wondering if he was a film student, gawking at his amazing body, and speculating that he must be at least 6'2". Despite Hyan being nervous at the idea of her cover being blown, he simply wanted to take her for lunch, thinking she might have been frightened because of the incident. After all, her alibi checked out fine. They somehow conversed on what happened to caught vampires, where he answered they were paralyzed using an electrified wire and thrown into a blast furnace over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. A vampire's only weakness was their heart, and this was the easiest method to use for the force to kill them. His goal was to catch all the vampires and bring things back to normal, not knowing she was a vampire, of course. Having their meal together, he wondered why she wasn't ordering more than just a simple roll of gimbap. However, she was just trying to hold down the smell of human food, which totally disgusted her. Un-tae then accidentally cut his hand, causing her heart to beat rapidly. He then started sucking the blood right in front of her, causing her to clench on her crown. She could tell he was baiting her into revealing her secret. As far as he knew, vampires were the only ones who felt excruciating pain whenever they ate normal food. She wondered how he figured out her identity as a vampire, speculating that he's trying to get her to blow her cover. Caught in a very tough spot, she didn't see any good options, so she forced herself to eat the gimbap and said that the dining hall food was so good despite how little it cost. After that, she barfed up all the food in the toilet, feeling much better as it left her system, then began saying a prayer, begging the Lord to help her out a tiny bit, promising to clean the church every day and never miss a single mass again. She quickly went back on that promise because she bumped into Un-tae again. With him noticing the sticky rice bread she got earlier, she tells him that it's for her younger siblings back at home, and asked him if he wanted some, but he humbly declined her offer, making her feel better because the kids really loved the bread. The student council protesters decided to take matters into their own hands by cutting themselves to prove that they didn't have healing abilities like vampires. The council leader didn't see any other choice but to suspect those who refused to join in. With a strong voice, he told the students that proactively proving that they weren't vampires would be good for everyone, and, in a broader sense, be good for the school and society. Hyan tried to remain calm amidst the chaos, thinking of a way to get out of the scene quickly. He suddenly showed up again, grabbing her hand and telling her to just walk calmly with him. They get stopped by the council members, who tell them they should do the test if they have nothing to hide. Hyan interjected and said it wasn't proper for them to suspect without reason, and forced her to do something against her will. But the protester snapped back and grabbed her hand forcefully, She gritted her teeth nervously, realizing that this was the end of the road for her. But surprisingly, there was a bandage on her arm. This must have been the bandage that Eun-tae used when he got hurt earlier. The council leader showed up, saying that she could have gotten that bandage anywhere. He wanted to see her perform the test again, realizing that there was no other way for her to get out of this. Eun-tae grabbed the guy as he tried reaching for her, and threatened to charge them for their crimes. With his overwhelming strength, he squeezed the guy's wrist, but the guy was determined to get expelled, all in the name of catching vampires today. To that, Eun-tae showed his ID, revealing himself as a police officer, and the guy was left speechless. At night, Hyeon thought about how she barely escaped while looking at a text from Eun-tae. Her siblings teased her for having a boyfriend, but she told them to just go back to sleep. He's no ordinary person, but why did he let her go earlier? She didn't know for sure, but felt like he wasn't a bad person. However, Eun-tae didn't think he'd run into a pure-blood vampire so soon. The next day, some gangsters came looking for Father Michael, who suddenly showed up with a bat in his hand. The gangsters were terrified to see such a weird-looking priest, but the bald fatty threatened to not go easy on Father Michael if he didn't sign the papers. Father Michael smashed his bat on the ground and suggested that they go somewhere quieter to talk. The gangsters left, and the bald one spoke like he would have been able to handle the priest, but it was all just big talk. There were rumors that said anywhere Father Michael went, people would start dying. He returned home, where Hyeon welcomed him in high spirits. He asked what was up with her, but she told him that she's just really happy to see him. Father Michael is the church's priest, and he's like a father to her. She's really grateful to him for giving her the chance to go to college like other normal kids, but he gets really mad whenever she morphs into a vampire, so she didn't want him to know what happened recently. 2 women came into the room and offered the priest a brew of plum wine as they wished him a happy birthday and thanked him for fixing their plumbing. Hyeon felt glad that he liked the drink and relieved he knew nothing about what happened. That was until he asked her to come up to the roof. He already knew that she was responsible for the vampire incident nearby and asked her if she planned to get her siblings and everyone in the neighborhood killed. Because of this, he lost trust in her and forbade her from going to school until she earned it back. She pleaded with him, highlighting how much effort she had put into adapting to everyday life. She wasn't allowed to go outside since she was 10 and never had the chance to make friends. All the while, she stayed out of trouble and did everything that was asked of her. But it didn't matter how much a wild beast was trained. In other people's eyes, she would always be a monster. These harsh words from the man she saw as a father left her stunned. In the city, protests sprang up rapidly because people were tired of living in fear of the vampires. It was only a matter of time before their world would be stained in blood, so they needed to find and kill all these horrific monsters. Hyeon didn't have any memories of her past before she arrived at the orphanage 10 years ago during the winter. While she figured out who she was, she realized something. Normal people were like beautiful flowers that came in all kinds of pretty colors, while she was just a filthy can that didn't belong among them. She started to see things from Father Michael's view. It didn't matter how hard she tried. To them, she'll always be a monster wearing a human mask. She would never be able to make friends she could share her life with, and never be able to tell someone she loved them. Despite the emotions that welled up inside her, Hyeon just wanted to be human, and she was willing to put her life on the line. Outside a club, some vampires found a new kid who would serve as a replacement for Byung-soo. They warned the newbie to grovel if he ever came across an angel of death. The 6 leaders who ruled over all the vampires in the country were known as angels of death. They each had extraordinary powers that were so dominating they could raise an entire city to the ground by themselves. Men blocked the way as an unknown man tried to enter the club. The man told them he was there to see the angel of death, but one of the guys warned him to leave quickly or he would find himself on a missing persons list. He would shove through them and instantly blow their heads away in the blink of an eye, revealing himself to be a vampire as well, demanding once more to see the angel of death. Seeing the situation outside, the angel of death, Lucian, decides to let him in. On the fact that you need to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm begging you, please. This video took so long to make. I don't know if I can eat this month without your subscription. But that's okay, because at least my heart is full, just like my channel is full of wonderful stories for you to enjoy, with action, romance, and drama. So come on, hit that subscribe and give me a like. The loud music vibrated through the walls of the club. Suddenly, the intruding vampire slammed someone on a table, causing people to run out in fear. He demanded the Angel of Death come to face him because he was tired of playing with rookies. Lucian applauded as he approached the vampire and asked what business he had with him. The vampire didn't believe Lucian could possibly be an Angel of Death, seeing that he looked too puny. But Lucian mocked the man for thinking he could simply become an Angel of Death to prolong his life, considering most regular vampires only lived up to 5 years. He recognized the intruding vampire as a UFC champion and was even a big fan, so he offered the man a chance to join his group. But the man didn't want to work for someone he felt was weaker than him. He gave Lucian one more chance to hand over his title, or he would face the consequences. But Lucian just mocked him more. He would land a powerful uppercut on Lucian's jaw, sending him into the air. The Angel of Death was overwhelmed by the vampire's flurry of punches, which left the other vampires amazed. The man felt like he was overflowing with power, and he was now much stronger than he was before he became a vampire. He was going to leave his boring life behind and become an Angel of Death, so he could get everything he ever wanted. But Lucian snapped him back to reality as he flicked the man's forehead, sending him flying across the room and crashing into a wall. After that, he told his men to clean up the mess. He expected more from the man, who was a UFC champion, but the fight was too disappointing. Lucian got word from one of his men about a pure-blood vampire, and now he was eager to meet this person right away. Elsewhere, some people tried to help a cat that had fallen into a sewer. Hyan distracted the crowd and saved the poor kitty, ending up on the front page of the newspaper for her heroic deed. Back home, Father Michael was furious because she drew attention to herself again. It's impossible to guess how much power mixed blood vampires have amassed in the last 10 years. They formed organizations like gangsters and terrorists, hiding in plain sight and holding influential positions. They would take over the country one day, but because they didn't have long lifespans, they needed the blood of a pure-blood vampire. Hyan wondered how Father Michael knew all this. Just what was she to him? She accepted being a monster, but questioned if he ever thought about how she felt every day. She felt like he wasn't worried about her as a person, but only as a vampire. Hyan quickly opened the door and ran out. Then Father Michael picked up the birthday letter she dropped for him, which left him depressed. It had always been like this. He responded to other people with kindness. However, he never once replied to any of her letters. At church, people noticed that Father Michael was quite aloof, suspecting that he was in a dangerous line of work. He threatened to send them out if they disrupted the service again. A cold shiver suddenly ran down his spine as he looked up and saw Lucian standing before him. He needed to get Lucian to leave quickly because the congregation was in danger. But the Angel of Death would only leave as soon as he found Hyan. Father Michael had threatening eyes as he told Lucian that the person he sought wasn't here. Lucian wondered why Michael was looking fierce when he hadn't even said who he was looking for. The man behind tapped Lucian's umbrella, telling him to hurry up so everyone else could take their turn receiving communion. The vampire clutched the umbrella with all his might and warned the man not to touch him again. The man ignored the warning and tossed the umbrella to the side. Escalating the situation, he grabbed Lucian's shoulder. Instantly, the vampire's eyes were set to kill, but Father Michael quickly stopped him. He ended the mass, asking the congregation to return home. Lucian then tossed his club card towards the priest and sent his regards to Hyan. Father Michael figured that the vampires must have known where Hyan had been living all this time, but the reason they hadn't attacked so far is that they've been waiting for her heart to mature. He looked over to the family picture on the table, which made him recall the past. It happened when he was deployed overseas. He got to know a certain kid whose circumstances weren't great, but the kid always had such a happy smile on his face. Despite the fact he could only communicate in short sentences, they became close in no time. The kid made him smile, despite being exhausted from the hard life of a soldier overseas. It was only a matter of time before disaster snuck up on him, like a sudden storm. He hadn't seen the kid in a while, but he ended up coming across him where he wished he hadn't. The soldiers pointed their guns at the kid because he had been seen wandering around the area for a few days. Michael told the kid to follow the soldiers' orders, but as the boy opened his bag, a loud bang was heard. The boy breathed his last breath. The kid's parents had been moving bombs and used him as a diversion, and the only things he had in his bag were empty paint cans. From that day, Father Michael stopped smiling. He felt helpless and racked with guilt. Although selfish, he felt he could wash away his guilt if he served God, but he wasn't able to change anything. It was around the time that the entire country was starting to panic due to the emergence of vampires. One night, he took a stroll as it snowed harder than it had in a few years, and suddenly, he was faced with another storm as he saw a child covered in blood on the floor. At the hospital, the nurse told him the young girl had no scratches on her body. He told the nurse that he wasn't the girl's guardian, but as the girl grabbed his jacket tightly, something urged him to bring her home. Hyeon lost all of her memories, excluding her name and age. Father Michael could instantly tell she wasn't human when she started feeding on the blood of rats. Looking at her caused him painful memories that bubbled up in his nightmares each night. He tore up the letters the young kid had written to him earlier so that he could forget the painful memories. The next day, he read a letter from Hyeon, thanking him for taking care of her and apologizing for throwing up his food. She would then later go to the police station, where she revealed herself to be a vampire. The officer became nervous and told her not to joke about stuff like that, since the people here were afraid. Hyeon decided to prove that her words were true. Her heart raced as she sprouted sharp claws. Then, as the officer reached for her gun, Father Michael would interrupt Hyeon's transformation. He told her that he had been looking everywhere for her and apologized to the officers with the excuse his daughter was just pulling a prank. With him knocked out of his daydream, he packed his bags. He didn't know when the vampires would return, so he needed to cover his tracks and find a way to keep the kids safe. Since the vampires didn't see him at the main entrance, he decided to take the side path, but got stopped by a group of vampires that already knew he was running away. Father Michael was completely petrified by their overwhelming aura. They really knew how to intimidate. He wouldn't be surprised if they could bring a person to their knees just from their threatening looks. He begged them to spare the children, but two vampires dashed past him before he could react. He ran after them as they searched the house frantically. The vampire smashed the door open, setting off a gas trap. Then, a huge explosion went off, engulfing the house in flames. The vampires screamed in agony as their comrades asked what they did. The priest had pulled a fast one on them. One of the vampires dashed to blow Father Michael's head off, but he would smash a bag of bricks instead. The priest whipped out a flamethrower and turned the vampire into fresh barbecue. The others didn't understand what made him think he could win a fight against them. But Michael knew that they were mixed-blood vampires that were scared of facing a pureblood, and also couldn't use their full powers during the day when the sunlight was at its strongest. Then suddenly, another explosion erupted beside them, destroying all their cars. The vampires wondered just who this priest was. Father Michael mocked them for falling for such a simple trap. He still had all his weapons from the time he was a soldier, while in contrast, claimed he was just a simple guy, and wanted them to excuse him for leveling the playing field. The vampires demanded the location of the pureblood. Meanwhile, Hyeon was approached by Yerim and Yunsu. The kids felt she missed her old neighborhood, so they told her to forget the past and get used to their new home, and not to waste time waiting for Father Michael, since he'd be back whenever he gets what he forgot at the church. Hyeon remembered when Father Michael broke the news about them moving out. She questioned how he could make such a big decision without consulting them. However, their minds quickly changed when Father Michael showed them their new place. It was also close to Hyeon's school, so she had no need to worry about having to transfer. She was amazed to see that her room had its own desk. After that, she watched Father Michael play games with the kids. He decided that they should celebrate their move by ordering pizza, but seeing a bag of ox blood in the fridge, bought by Father Michael, she knew he wasn't the type of person to accidentally leave something behind, but joined her siblings, assuring them that he would be back soon. All the while, he was still roasting the vampires that attacked him. He had killed 3 of them so far, and had just enough fuel to finish off the rest. One of the vampires struggled through the flames and destroyed the fuel canister, causing it to explode. The priest was in serious trouble because his best weapon was gone. With this, his enemies had him backed into a corner. A vampire told him humans were weak because they relied on flimsy weapons. So Michael blasted a hole through the vampire's chest with a gun. The vampire wondered what he was trying to do with a flimsy gun when little wounds like that would quickly heal. Father Michael's real name was Choi Myung-soo. His physical abilities were excellent, and he was an exceptional soldier. However, his comrades saw him as an amateur when it came to guns. During training, he was only able to hit the target once, despite using up all the bullets. He would get nudged back to reality when the vampire told him to accept a swift death. Father Michael aimed at the vampire, shooting a bigger hole at the same spot on the vampire's chest, just like he had been trained to do back then. He told the vampires that a couple years ago, the government experimented on a mixed blood vampire, but they were forced to abandon the experiment due to interference by another mixed blood. Despite that, they were still successful in finding out something about vampire bodies. If you kept hitting the same spot, it would greatly slow down their regeneration until they couldn't regenerate anymore. After that, the vampire's body began to dissipate. As the other vampires rushed towards Father Michael, he clicked his gun and told them they should have known their place. He stood in the middle of the fire as the vampires' bodies dissipated, wondering if he had gotten all of them. His eyes widened in fear as Lucian approached him from the flames. The Angel of Death commended him, saying that an entire squad of Marines wouldn't have managed to take down his vampires. Michael was fortunate that Lucian's henchmen didn't tell him about the trap he set. This meant he could trick Lucian into thinking the kids didn't survive. He blamed the vampires for the death of his kids, acting hysterical, but Lucian could see right through and told Michael he should have done more research on them and showed that the flames weren't strong enough to kill a pureblood. Michael was shocked to see that Lucian was unaffected by the flames. What he had left wouldn't be able to stop the vampire, so he had to step up his game. He blasted a hole through Lucian's chest, but the Angel of Death wasn't fazed. Michael would hit the vampire with all the bullets he had left, and Lucian mocked him for his terrible aim because he couldn't hit the same spot. Michael then backed away to get close to his bag, and he brought out a rocket launcher. But despite having the intense firepower, he couldn't believe that Lucian was still standing in front of him with only torn up clothes. Fear struck Michael as the Angel of Death rushed to put an end to his life. Meanwhile, Hyan sped through the streets, worried because Michael had never come home this late before. Her heart raced uncontrollably as she prayed for him to be okay. She panicked as she saw the huge fire and smoke from the church, and when she arrived there, the firefighters refused to go in because the building was about to collapse. But she saw Michael trapped under a large pillar and rushed to save him. Father Michael quickly stopped her because she was unaware that she had transformed. He told her not to come closer because of all the people watching. As Hyan brought out her crown, the firefighters told her to step back. With her hair back to normal, she felt she could dash in to save her father without anyone noticing. But Michael yelled at her to stay away. If she lifted the pillar in front of everyone, her identity would be exposed. The firefighters didn't have the equipment to lift the pillar either. As the building kept falling apart, Hyan begged them to rush in and save Michael, but he made peace with the situation. He recalled how Hyan had grown with her siblings through the years, and his last words to her were to take care of them and make sure she survives. Hyan was heartbroken as the building finally collapsed and killed her father. Everyone wept bitterly at Father Michael's funeral. Unte suspected the mixed blood vampires were behind it all, but the fire destroyed any evidence. He noticed Hyan walking to the altar and felt she was coping well. She comforted her siblings, but remained silent. She would wake up from nightmares of Father Michael calling her a monster and thought it was only natural for him to say that to her. After all, that's what she was. Yerim and Yunsu tried not to show their sadness, but Hyan just embraced them. She couldn't look her siblings in the eyes, thinking she could have saved Michael and urged them to stay strong so he could be at ease in heaven. But in her room alone, she wondered what she was going to do now. As she packed her things, she opened a drawer and found the letters she had written to her father, feeling glad that he didn't throw them away. She then found another stack of letters that were all addressed to her. One was from 10 years ago, when she first met Michael. Then, the most recent letter. Michael admitted that he was harsh to her. He was worried that all her efforts to live a normal life would go to waste, but admitted that he had crossed the line. Even if he was stern with her, she would go out at the crack of dawn to get him medicine and cook for her siblings. She'd also remember his birthday, even though he never bothered to celebrate. Before he met her, he was a lost soul, racked with guilt, but found a new purpose in life. After meeting her, she taught him a lot of things about life and himself, so he believed in her and thought she would have a positive impact on others. He didn't have the courage to give her the letter because he didn't see himself as a good person, but was always thankful for her. He promised to write again. Tears flowed down Hyan's eyes, and her hands trembled as she read Father Michael's last letter. Images of the past flashed through her mind. After she met Michael, he gave her a reason to live. Even though she was a vampire, Hyan clutched the letter and let out a loud, bitter cry. Suddenly, she saw the club card that Lucian had given her father. This made her recall when the investigators spoke about searching the club to look for clues. That night, she knelt before the altar and vowed to lead a quiet life without causing any trouble, and take care of her siblings, making sure they get into college. But to do that, she would need to do more than get even with the people who killed her father. Eun-tae didn't want to march into the club without proper evidence, and didn't want people who were forced into being vampires be put in the same category as other criminals. Their only choice was to keep digging until they found something useful. Some cases revolved around a man who subjected 40 different drivers to verbal and physical abuse. He also gave a client's employee third-degree burns because he didn't like the coffee, and beat up a housekeeper because she didn't position his bag straps to face him. The perpetrator was the son of Jinhan Group's CEO. Eun-tae's colleague asked why he's bringing this up. Eun-tae then revealed that the perpetrator was none other than Lucian. In the Red Bomb Club, Lucian and his people were having a good time. A waiter accidentally spilled blood on Lucian's trousers as he refilled the glass, so Lucian blew his head off. The Angel of Death was irritable and impatient, waiting for Hyan. He felt special from a young age. In his younger years, he would beat up his classmate, Dae-soo, who looked down on him. And when it was reported to the teacher, Dae-soo would be the one asked to apologize. The feeling Lucian got from this was incredible, and he felt the world was his for the taking. No matter their age, everyone submitted to him, and it didn't change as the years went on. He would lash out at an innocent worker when he felt they were looking down on him. When he saw people who didn't know their place, he wanted to crush them. He believed life was a breeze, until one fateful day, a dead body lay in a pool of blood, and Lucian was next. His heart raced when the vampire set sights on him. Lucian saw the guy as a complete loser and questioned why someone like that would look down on him. It made him so excited, eager to know what made this person so special. Lucian asked to become just like the vampire. After drinking the blood offered to him, he passed out. He had no idea how much time had passed while unconscious. When he became a vampire, he realized that there were many more above him. It was a completely different world from the one he had known before. He was told to follow the rules, or he would die. One by one, he brought them down to their knees, and in a matter of time, he had built up an army of vampire underlings. It was strange because they had all become vampires in the same way. They should have been stronger than him due to how weak he was before. It was clear that something made him exceptionally strong compared to other vampires, meaning he was also special in this world. Lucian would get snapped back to reality when a waiter told him he had a visitor. Hyan slowly walked into the club, bearing her sharp fangs and claws, and even placing the crown of thorns on her head, it had no effect anymore. She stopped herself as she reached for the door handle and smashed it open, blasting away the two vampires that came to get her. A vampire known as the Bloodhound was talking to two girls when they noticed a dead body flung across the room. As Hyan approached, the Bloodhound grabbed one of the girls, known as Hannah, as a hostage. But Hyan slashed off his hand quickly before he could react. She told Hannah to get away, but the girl revealed herself to be a vampire too, and latched onto Hyan, while the others rushed to take her down. Hannah boasted about being a former judo champion, and Bloodhound also doubted that Hyan could escape the girl's hold. But Hyan blasted the girl's hand away, and had already known Hannah was a vampire, because perfume couldn't mask the stench of blood. After that, she blew off Hannah's head, and asked for the one who killed her father to come forward. As all the vampires rushed towards Hyan, she took them out one by one. In a few moments, she had killed so many without taking a single scratch. The Bloodhound could tell that something was off about her. Hyan wondered how long she had been fighting for. There were about 30 vampires left, but she couldn't calm her boiling rage. It felt like her heart was about to explode. She was determined to find the person who killed her father. Lucian finally showed up. He was furious with his underlings for always embarrassing him, and left them trembling in complete fear. He then approached Hyan and offered her a variety of drinks. Lucian acknowledged that purebloods were totally different, but wanted to see her bow down to him. He admitted that he killed the priest. Their bones cracked, preparing to fight. The Bloodhound felt that they had the numbers advantage, and Hyan wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. She glared at him, and he felt his body being blasted away instantly. His heart raced as he realized he would die at this rate. Hyan told Lucian that he should have come to face her directly instead of killing her father. As she let out a cry full of rage, The bloodhound dashed away, fearing for his life. He felt that Lucian was also no match for her. Hyan lunged toward Lucian in the blink of an eye and landed a devastating blow, but it wasn't enough to even put a scratch on his face. Lucian felt that pure blood wasn't as strong as he thought, because she seemed much weaker than expected. He assumed it might be because he had become more powerful. The current era of chaos created by the appearance of vampires was devised by a vampire known as God. He divided the country into 7 different regions and assigned the Angels of Death to each region. However, there was one region that had yet to be assigned. The region was infamous for having a lot of fierce vampires who battled for the title of Angel of Death. But the battle ended in a few days when one vampire joined. That was none other than Lucian. It took him just 2 days to destroy the competition. The Angels of Death received a gift, which was the blood of a pure-blood vampire. It was God's blood. The vampires became extraordinarily powerful after drinking it. Hyan quickly knocked out his tooth and sent him crashing into the wall. She ran out of patience while he was still talking. Lucian was struck with fear because he had never seen anything like this before. But he reminded her that she was in his home turf. As she lunged at him again, the lights and music suddenly turned off. Lucian refused to believe that he was weaker than her. He planned to use this chance to lure her onto the stage and finish her off in one blow. But she would instantly appear in front of his face, reminding him that he couldn't cover up the stench of blood. After that, she blew him away. Lucian panicked, wondering what to do now. His body trembled, his legs couldn't move, and he couldn't speak. He questioned why Hyan didn't fight like this right from the beginning, and then found himself kneeling before her. She said she didn't use her full strength because the bigger they are, the harder they fall. He probably felt on top of the world when he killed Father Michael. But now, it was time for him to fall. Hyan pummeled him fiercely into the ground, and he begged for her to stop. He curled up his body like a coward and told her that it wouldn't be over if she killed him. Every single vampire in the country would hunt her down to the gates of hell, even if it meant they would kill her family and everyone else in the world to find her. But Hyan planned to kill them first anyway. She then killed Lucian with the flick of her finger, and his body disintegrated. Suddenly, a group of police officers swarmed her, and Untae approached her, asking who she was. As she turned her head slowly, she kicked them away and quickly dashed out of the room before the exits could be blocked, and spread through the rooftops of buildings, getting enough distance to shake off her pursuers. However, she didn't understand Untae. Back in the club, he realized who she was and told her to hit him, then make a run for it. He also helped her back then in school. She couldn't understand why he went out of his way to help her. It's not just her being threatened by vampires now. She would put her siblings in danger if she kept staying with them. She decided to strike the vampires first, but didn't know where to start. The loneliness was overwhelming her. She wondered how she would face her siblings in her vampire form. They suddenly approached her and asked why she didn't come home last night. She panicked and tried to cover her face, but Yerm could tell that she looked different. Hyan wanted to get away and explain the situation later, but surprisingly, her siblings quickly covered her before someone saw her. They told her that she did a bad job of hiding her identity. Hyan thanked them for understanding and apologized. They knew that she was a vampire the entire time, since she could only eat ox and pig blood, even though she tried to hide it. Hyan then told them that she needed to go far away to do something she had been wanting to do, and the kids understood and agreed to wait for her. When she went to say her final goodbyes, she overheard them crying, and it made her sad as well. Meanwhile, Untae's colleagues were worried about the vampire girl who got away. Suddenly, he saw Hyan standing in front of them, and he freaked out, telling her that she couldn't just waltz into a police station. The others stepped out, and she told him that she had to wear a wig and colored contacts because she couldn't change back. Hyan asked for his help to keep her siblings safe, and also mentioned her plan to take down all the vampires in the world, bringing things back to normal. To do that, she needed his help. She felt she was asking for a lot. After all, she was a vampire herself. But he agreed to help her, and said that she would be the one helping him by taking down the vampires. She asked how he knew her secret, and why he helped her. He refused to answer the first question, but for the second, he just couldn't believe that anyone who liked sticky rice bread was a bad person. Vampires had spread to many areas in the city and infiltrated various sectors. If they didn't stop them, the country would be finished. Hyan was ready to work with him and get rid of the vampires once and for all. The next day, Untae woke up to the morning sun, eyes slowly opening and started his daily routine. After a hot shower, he would listen to music and read the paper. Lastly, he drank some barley tea. My personal favorite, by the way. But at that moment, he was freaked out to see Hyeon. She wondered why he was surprised as well. He recalled the previous night. She decided to stay out to clear her head. He returned a while after and found out she had no place to stay. So he took her to the guest room of his house, where she spent the night. This way, they'd have a place to plan their strategy. Untae felt embarrassed about what had just happened, completely forgetting he took her in, and she teased him about his weird behavior. Elsewhere, a divorced couple was arguing. The man threatened the ex-wife to pick up her phone next time, or she would regret it. But she refused to take any of his calls. Untae would show up in time to stop the man from hitting his ex-wife, and the man became more furious, deciding to take out his anger on Untae. He threw numerous punches, but Untae evaded them all. After that, Untae slammed the man to the ground and read his rights. However, the man was completely knocked out. Other officers showed up to take the man into custody. Later on, the ex-wife thanked Untae with a cup of coffee. Seo approached Untae and was surprised to see he liked coffee with milk. The captain helped him light a cigarette. Seo then said he applied to the task force to learn from him. They saw their colleague trying to get Chief Jung to deploy more police for an upcoming protest. He felt it was unfair that they got blamed all the time for not catching vampires. There was a protest planned at Gwanghwamun Square. Don't kill me for the mispronunciation. But Untae told everyone it wouldn't be a violent protest. The chief turned to the guy and implied it would be risky to use measures that threatened people's safety. She said it was their job to make sure no one was hurt during the protests. As she walked away, she waved over to Untae, and Seo decided to head back inside. Untae, on the other hand, felt a storm brewing. With Lucian dead, there were only 5 Angels of Death left. Untae planned to take them down one by one, but Hyeon felt it would take too long. She proposed they get rid of them quickly, or her siblings would be in danger. Untae was conducting investigations recently, but something kept blocking him from the information he was after. Due to this, he proposed that they be careful with their plans. He had all the evidence in his home because he didn't trust anyone. Soon after, they headed to the police department to flush out the mold. Hyeon suddenly saw herself at the church and wondered why she was there. Father Michael was under the rubble again. The fire burst out in his image, asking why she didn't save him. She quickly woke up from that terrible nightmare and tried to catch her breath while clutching her crown tightly. The next day, an old lady tripped and spilled her groceries in front of the police department. Chief Jung would approach the woman and help her pick up the items. Other officers were jealous and made Jung feel excluded, but she rose through the ranks without a hint of corruption. He really admired her after seeing the way she helped the old lady, then offered Untae a cigarette while Untae waited for Hyeon to get into position on the rooftop of the building. The previous night, he told her how he suspected there was someone working with the vampires. His suspect was none other than Chief Jung. Her position made it easy to cover up information about vampires and the crimes they've committed. The Angels of Death were known to constantly change their locations and identities. After Lucian's death, their movements suddenly vanished. If they caught Jung, he'd be able to get a more detailed understanding of the hidden Angels of Death. Untae needed more time to take Jung down, but Hyeon decided to take care of it. She would sneak into Jung's office while the chief was on call with her boyfriend. She needed to transfer all the data from Jung's laptop to a USB stick. Luckily, Jung hadn't noticed her presence. Hyeon intended to finish up quickly and leave quietly, but it would take up to 5 minutes for the files to be copied. She tried to cancel the transfer, but the laptop started beeping loudly. Hyeon hid under the table as Chief Jung turned around. If she got caught, they'd have to start over to find information on the Angels of Death. It took years for Untae to get this intel, and Hyeon didn't have the time to wait another set of years. She thought about killing the chief, but it would only make things messier. Meanwhile, Jung threatened the intruder wouldn't leave alive. Caught in a tight corner, Hyeon hoped the transfer would finish quickly. Suddenly, Untae approached the chief and reported that there were no signs of violence at the protest. However, the chief was fixated on catching the intruder. When she approached the table, Hyeon had already left the office. After that, Jung decided to go patrol the protest with Untae. Later on, Hyeon met up with Untae to go through the files. She revealed that the mastermind behind the scenes was Jung's boyfriend. As the door beside them creaked open, Untae quickly closed his laptop. Suddenly, Seo showed up and asked how they knew it was him. He wondered if they were planning to do something big with the information they got. He mocked Untae and also figured out that Hyeon was the one in the mask. and also said that their network had become very powerful over the past 10 years. After that, he offered to let Eun-tae go if he handed over the laptop. Seo had gotten rid of all the evidence of the crimes: SA, kidnapping, money laundering, manipulating the media, all of which the vampires had committed. Eun-tae then revealed the Red Bomb Club had also served as a safe haven for their patrons, but not a single article was published about the club. It turned out that Chief Jung was just a figurehead that Seo put in position. Eun-tae vowed to take down all the vampires by using the evidence he had now, so Seo destroyed the laptop with his gun, but Eun-tae still had a copy on a USB stick. He told Seo that he had also looked into him as well. Eun-tae planned with Hyeon to investigate Seo more thoroughly once they were out of Jung's office. She then agreed to lure Seo to the rooftop, and that was how he walked into their trap. Eun-tae tossed him a pair of handcuffs so he could cuff himself, but Seo wasn't going to surrender because he only had 3 years left to live. Hyeon then threatened him to put them on with a terrifying look, and Seo could immediately tell that he was no match for her, so he agreed to be arrested. Not. Seo shot out an electric net at Eun-tae. Hyeon rushed in to protect the captain. Then, Seo used that chance to leap into the streets and escape. He was purposely running through the streets because he knew Hyeon couldn't attack him with people around. So, she tailed him through the rooftops. She needed to intercept him and lead him where there was no one around. It looked like he was about to enter an open space, so this was her chance to lure him. But she saw that Seo was headed into the protest grounds. The people weren't about to let the police and government ignore them. They wanted to know why nothing was being done about the vampires. This big crowd wasn't the place for Hyeon to fight. Seo knew that Hyeon couldn't do anything there. If a fight broke out, a lot of innocents would get hurt. Hyeon wondered what to do in this tough situation. Meanwhile, Seo was ready to kill people if she made a move. She remembered the flaming image of Father Michael and asked him what she should do. Eun-tae called out to her, but she wasn't sure if she could complete what she set out to do. As her heart raced, Seo was about to leave the scene. At the same time, Eun-tae tried to figure out what to do. Suddenly, a huge explosion went off in the middle of the crowd. Everyone was confused, and they became scared when they saw it was a vampire. Seo thought Hyeon had completely lost her mind, but Hyeon was ready to give him a taste of her pure-blood powers. Hyeon wished she weren't a vampire, but she couldn't change who she was. Everyone had to accept who they were. If she couldn't stop being a vampire, then the only thing she could do was face herself. She made up her mind to use the power she was born with for the greater good. With the people running away, she didn't have to worry about Seo hurting anyone. Seo rushed towards her, but suddenly, his instincts warned him that he would die if he fought her. His body trembled in fear as he thought about what to do. He ran to get away from her at first, but she kept appearing in his face no matter where he went. With the flick of her hand, she sent him crashing into the ground. He couldn't get away no matter what he did. He whipped out his gun and threatened to shoot Hyeon in the head. That wouldn't work on her, of course, so he decided to aim at an innocent civilian. Before he could pull the trigger, she smacked him so hard, his head nearly popped. He realized that he was nothing but a bug in front of her. Meanwhile, Eun-tae guided the civilians to safety, but Jung would ambush him in her vampire form. She held a gun to his head and called out to Hyeon, who was about to finish off Seo. Jung told them that society was ridiculous because the public became less chaotic with the appearance of vampires. Crimes committed by non-vampires dropped significantly because they were afraid to go out at night, and reasoned this was for the better of humanity. Eun-tae told her that way of thinking was cowardly, causing Jung to recall when she was frustrated because only corrupt cops got promoted despite her good scores. That was when Seo approached her and told her to climb to the top of the ladder. She laughed at him and tried to take her leave, but she was too drunk to walk straight. Seo then gave her a pill, saying it would cure her hangover. Naturally, she would have been suspicious, but she was too tired of thinking that night. After she took the pill, unbelievable things began happening to her. She got congratulated without doing any work and replaced her superiors. Eventually, she stopped feeling guilty and there was no going back. If she wanted to work for the greater good, she needed to climb to the top. She punched Eun-tae and grabbed him by the neck. Seo claimed the country was already rotten and the police were simply their lapdogs. He threatened to shoot Eun-tae and Hyeon and also get rid of the evidence. But Eun-tae told him that if he destroyed the USB stick, a tracker would activate and the special task force would come to arrest him. Seo didn't care because he could order the police to do whatever he wanted, and they couldn't do a thing about it. Hyeon could reach Jung before she could pull the trigger, and Jung knew this. Suddenly, gunshots went off, and it was Chief Jung who had shot her boyfriend. Jung told Seo to never disrespect the police force like that. Seo instantly rushed toward her, saying that she would never be where she was without him. He pierced her shoulder with his hand, telling her that she was no better than him. Jung responded by telling him that she figured she might as well start trying to atone for her sins by eliminating him. Instantly, she slashed his body, and Seo realized that things had gotten messed up for him. He kicked her away and made a run for it. Haeyeon tried to chase after him, but Eun-tae stopped her. Seo's wound was really deep, and it would take a while for him to recover. Suddenly, he saw an electric net captured him. As he struggled, Eun-tae approached and told him that he wouldn't be able to use his vampire abilities for a while. Seo escaped the net, saying it was too weak to hold him down. But the net took more out of him than he expected. Vampires were supposed to be tough, but Eun-tae saw Seo looked exhausted and asked him to give himself up. Seo told him to step aside, threatening that he could still take down a measly human even though he was injured. But Eun-tae wasn't scared. As Seo reached for his neck, Eun-tae quickly grabbed his hand and slammed him to the ground. After things were settled, he contacted his colleagues and told them his location. Haeyeon didn't think vampires had infiltrated the police force, and now thought she was likely to encounter them in tons of other unexpected places in the future. Seo then asked her if she thought she had accomplished something by capturing him, adding that she was just speeding up her death, and he would practice begging for his life if he were her, just like Father Michael did. Hearing this, Haeyeon regretted not killing him when she had the chance. Then suddenly, Jung pierced Seo's body and told him to try begging for his life. Got him. Haeyeon noticed that Jung was holding Seo's heart before crushing it. The next day, Eun-tae was on a call when he heard someone shouting in front of the police station. There, he saw the divorced couple from earlier arguing again and rushed to stop the man from beating his wife. But the woman suddenly slapped the man to the ground. After that, Eun-tae had the officers take him in. Moments later, a police vehicle arrived, and Jung, who was tied up, stepped out. She and Eun-tae looked at each other, but nothing was said. He felt nothing had changed because vampires still had control over the police force. He got rid of a key player in their network, but their corruption ran deep. Later on, he told Haeyeon that he had gathered data on the Angels of Death, but said the problem was that the vampire forces had grown at an alarming rate. He asked Haeyeon if she knew how many vampires were across the country, to which she answered about 5,000. She asked why the figure was important, and he told her that the figure had doubled in the last few months. After that, Eun-tae decided to move to the next phase of their plan. Elsewhere, at a clinic, Gyonu Shin was telling Yoon Seo to unload her emotional baggage. The girl thanked the counselor because it was hard for her to not have anyone to talk to. When he asked what would make her feel better, she answered, becoming a vampire. She figured Shin would think she was stupid. However, he would make her an offer. The next day, Eun-tae and Haeyeon met the principal of a school. Eun-tae noticed the neighborhood looked kind of dreary, but when the old man gave them a tour, they noticed the place was very lively with happy students. Haeyeon thought it didn't seem like the kind of place an Angel of Death would choose as their base of operations. The principal told them that the school had the distinction of winning nearly every award there was for a school. He worked hard to make sure his students had all the resources and support they needed. His job was stress-free, thanks to their excellent teachers and bright students. However, that expression flipped once he heard what they had to say. Haeyeon told him that their suspect in the recent murders was an alumni of the school, and she showed him the details. Eun-tae said they planned to conduct investigations for a week, and the principal asked if the suspect's actions had anything to do with what he showed them. But that was not the case. The principal said they would do their best to cooperate with the investigation. As he opened the door, Eun-tae and Haeyeon were shocked to see Shin, who they knew as Sahan. Prior to this, Eun-tae explained that Sahan worked as a counselor for 15 years and hadn't committed any major crimes. But out of all the Angels of Death, Sahan's group of followers was growing the fastest. He told Haeyeon to act like she knew nothing once she saw him, but seeing the vampire's picture, she felt he was worse than Lucian. Back in the office, they couldn't do anything with the principal there, but she was ready to attack if needed. Sahan asked if they had met before, but Haeyeon answered she's never gotten mistaken for someone else. As they stared at each other, he chuckled before wishing them luck on the investigation. Later on, Yoon Seo would bump into Haeyeon and fall to the ground. Eun-tae came to check on Haeyeon, but she told him to wait because she noticed the young girl was trembling. She saw Yoon Seo's red eyes and wondered if she was a vampire. But before she could say anything, the girl ran away. Hayan then told Euntae they needed to follow her. Yunseo staggered through the streets. She was really thirsty and thought about drinking animal blood. But Sahan told her not to draw attention to herself. She didn't know how she could resist using her new powers, because she thought she was powerful enough to do what she wanted. Meanwhile, Euntae and Hayan were watching her from a rooftop. Yunseo then walked into an alley where some bullies were harassing a girl. Their leader noticed her and told her to come. She felt Yunseo was ignoring her because she transferred to a new school. Yunseo looked at the bullies, recalling how they threatened her if she tried to snitch on them. They had told her to act smart or she wouldn't survive in school. She clenched her fist in anger and her heart raced rapidly. She also recalled how Sahan cautioned her not to draw attention to herself and decided it was best to not waste her powers on people like them. Suddenly, the leader of the bullies asked how her dad was, adding that Yunseo's dad was the kind who would roll around in feces for money. In response, Yunseo smashed the girl's chest and sent her flying away. The other bullies became frightened when they noticed their leader wasn't breathing, but Yunseo was about to make them pay. The bullies decided to run away when they saw that she had snapped, but she grabbed one of them by the neck. The guy still threatened to make her and her dad regret it, but that wouldn't matter if she killed him first. Euntae would interrupt her, and she remembered he was here to investigate the vampire-related murders. Euntae noted that she was very strong, holding the bully up with one arm. She knew she couldn't get caught, so she dropped the bully, and Euntae made the excuse she probably used to be on the weightlifting team. He thought their investigation would be ruined if things got out of hand, and people found out what Yunseo was. Suddenly, one of the bullies rushed to smash Yunseo's head with a brick, but they would all get tied up by Hayan. One of the bullies assumed they were gangsters because they sided with Yunseo, and they threatened to call the police. But Euntae would pretend he didn't see or hear anything. When they returned to school, all the students mistook Hayan for an actual detective and thought Euntae was just her subordinate. Hayan then came across Yunseo and asked if she remembered her, but the girl felt uneasy. As she approached Yunseo, she suddenly saw Sahan standing with the girl. Sahan asked Yunseo why she was so fidgety. He wondered if she had done something she wasn't supposed to, and she began trembling. So, he decided they should talk in his office. Meanwhile, Hayan and Euntae hadn't been able to find any decisive evidence, and they couldn't figure out what Sahan was planning. Hayan mentioned that he was unfazed by their presence, and seemed different from the other vampires that had come after her. Euntae then told her they had to be careful because Sahan was more dangerous than Lucian, pointing out that his harmless appearance was deceiving. He explained there was an incident 7 years ago where a group of vampires wanted to take Sahan's place as an angel of death. They were all notorious gang members, and each person was stronger than him. However, Sahan survived the fight without a single scratch. Meanwhile, in Sahan's clinic, the vampire asked Yunseo why she went against his orders. He pointed out that her body wouldn't be able to handle her new powers at this delicate stage, and gave her one last chance as he snapped his fingers. At the same time, Euntae explained that Sahan's power was hypnosis. That was how Sahan was able to control the minds of vampires who came to take him down. With the snap of his fingers, he forced them to attack themselves. Euntae felt Hayan wouldn't be able to escape the hypnosis even though she was a pureblood. So, Hayan then decided that she would train her mind. Back at the school, Sahan had completely hypnotized Yunseo to keep a low profile, and his next plan was to capture Hayan. Back when vampire murders were rampant in the neighborhood, Hayan felt like it was all her fault. She told Father Michael how she felt back then and asked him what she should do. He answered that she was too young to burden herself with all these concerns. She thought about fighting the vampires like a superhero because she felt she could kill them with a single blow. Deep down, she thought that if she didn't do something to help, then she had no place among the humans. However, Father Michael told her not to get involved because if she jumped in without thinking it through, it could make things worse for other people. After that, he handed her a jar of tomato juice, saying it was from the corner store down the street. Then told her she could try to help people when she was grown up and more able to relate to others. Coming back to reality, Hayan decided to investigate more about Yunseo because she felt it was too dangerous to confront Sahan at the moment. Meanwhile, Yunseo staggered through the streets as she noticed something was wrong with her body. She felt like she had been losing consciousness since she met with Sahan the last time. Suddenly, Hayan approached her and pointed out the girl was a vampire. Yunseo denied it and wondered how Hayan found out, since she never used her powers at school. She thought Hayan might have seen her when she punched the bully the other day, but she didn't sense anyone at the time. She didn't want to get caught, so she begged Hayan to look the other way. But Hayan knew what was going on between her and Sahan, which meant the girl's excuses were of no use. Yunseo trembled in fear as she stuttered saying she didn't know anything about Sahan. Hyeon wondered why the girl was so terrified to talk about him. Feeling threatened, Yoonseo activated her powers to fight. She started zipping around the place, feeling like a superhero because her body moved just the way she wanted it to. She felt she could easily kill Hyeon, but she would get flipped and thrown to the ground. Hyeon asked her to stop fighting, threatening that it wouldn't end well. Suddenly, Yoonseo threw a beam at Hyeon to distract her. She would appear from above, saying that she couldn't get arrested because there was something she had to do. However, Hyeon landed a single punch that sent the girl crashing to the ground. Yoonseo couldn't move and wondered how Hyeon was so strong. As the rods above her fell, she realized they would pierce her body, but Hyeon would save her and take all the damage. Later on, Yoonseo asked Hyeon what she was, after realizing she was a vampire as well. Hyeon then asked why Yoonseo became a vampire, which made the girl reflect on the past. Yoonseo's mother had abandoned their family, leaving her and her dad in debt. Every day she lived with her dad was endless torment. The man would earn money from his daughter getting beaten up and him winning settlement from lawsuits. He slapped her for glaring at him and said that her mother would have killed her if it wasn't for him. The beatings didn't stop. He told her to be grateful that he hadn't abandoned her. Yoonseo trembled as sadness and rage filled her up. She swore she was going to kill him. And so, she again asked Hyeon to look the other way this one time. Hyeon in response told Yoonseo she wanted to protect her and everyone else at her school. She asked the girl to help with her investigation, but Yoonseo would refuse. However, she was about to reveal something about Sahan, but the Angel of Death would suddenly appear behind her. Before he could slit her throat, Hyeon quickly blocked his attack. Yoonseo feared Sahan had seen everything, including her fight. She wanted to get away because she was scared of going through his hypnosis again. With her seeing his deadly eyes, she tried to explain. She recalled when Sahan hypnotized her and didn't understand what happened to her body. She promised to be good and fell to the ground in fear. She desperately begged for his help, and he was willing, but she would have to do everything he asked. And now, she was begging for his forgiveness. However, Hyeon could tell that he had done something horrible to her. Sahan then said Hyeon was being rude, and asked how she got along with her family with that kind of personality, mocking her for not having any family to speak of. Hyeon admitted he was good at getting people upset, like an annoying fly. Meanwhile, Yoonseo thought of doing something before Sahan could hypnotize Hyeon, but she wasn't strong enough to do anything. Suddenly, Sahan commanded her to bite Hyeon. Yoonseo begged him not to make her, but the Angel of Death reminded her that she had promised not to disobey him. As he snapped his fingers, Hyeon landed a strong punch that sent him flying away. After that, she grabbed him by the neck and pointed out that he wasn't human since he survived, which meant she didn't need to hold back. She threatened to break his neck if he didn't release Yoonseo from his mind control, but she noticed something wasn't right because he looked unharmed. He then told her she had already been hypnotized. She suddenly felt her bones breaking, causing excruciating pain. With him seeing that she was still alive, Sahan noted that she wasn't human either. Hyeon wondered if the Angel of Death had psychic powers. She was losing consciousness and needed a break out of Sahan's control. He told her not to fight it and tried to get her to sleep, but he was surprised to see she broke free, something no one had ever done before. Yoonseo would rush toward Hyeon and punch her away. As they fought, Sahan questioned why they headed toward the edge of the demolition zone. He yelled for them to come back. On the other hand, Hyeon couldn't defend herself because of all her broken bones. With Yoonseo completely under Sahan's control, she felt it was impossible to break free. Yoonseo would then punch her off the roof, and Hyeon landed on a truck. Sahan then decided to call it a night, so that they wouldn't draw attention. Later on, Hyeon woke up beside Eun-tae, who asked her what had happened. She recalled the fight with Yoonseo, who thanked her the moment she got knocked off the roof. She then realized that Yoonseo was never under Sahan's control at that moment. Hyeon tried to get up, but all her bones were still aching. It would take her a few days to recover and completely break free of the mind control. But she was shocked when she saw there wasn't a single scratch on her body. She realized all the pain she felt was planted in her mind by the hypnosis. She told Eun-tae that Sahan's hypnosis was dangerous because it felt real, and also said Yoonseo wasn't susceptible to it anymore. But she didn't know why. This meant once they found out, they could figure out how to beat him. They then showed Hyeon some surprising intel he found out about Yoonseo. Later on, Eun-tae told her that she needed to be more discreet. So, he would suggest using a means of getting around without raising suspicion. He showed her his bike collection, which he called his babies, and asked if she had a driver's license. Hyeon said she used to do grocery runs on her scooter, so he suggested a green scooter for her. But Hyan had her eyes on a more powerful bike. As they rode out, she asked why Sahan chose to target school kids. Untae surmised that Sahan must have rigged the application process to get kids who needed emotional support. After all, schools were the best place to find underlings. Sahan knew he wanted to create an army of perfect soldiers because turning people into vampires wasn't enough to make them obey him. Hypnotism was the best option for control. Yunseo was easy to control. She wasn't powerful or quick on her feet, but she had spirit. Untae explained that people like Lucian, who had a strong desire to achieve something, would become more powerful vampires, even though they were weak as humans. Sahan had the potential to wreak havoc, so they were racing against the clock. He had also set up dozens of schools in the area as part of his plan. However, Yunseo's school was the only place where he had turned people into vampires. Untae and Hyan needed to stop the Angel of Death before more vampires would rise. Hyan felt the kids at school were good and innocent, and was furious with Sahan for making their lives worse when they were already suffering. Meanwhile, Sahan wanted Yunseo to take on some duties because she had become a full-fledged vampire. She suggested taking out Hyan so that Sahan wouldn't notice that she wasn't under his hypnosis. Changing topics, Sahan told her that vampires required a special diet. So he tossed a rat to her and told her to drink its blood. Yunseo froze as her heart raced, and he wondered why she wasn't drinking yet. She felt like throwing up, but she did it regardless. Just as Sahan dismissed her, he suddenly appeared in front of her, asking when his hypnosis stopped working. She tried to play dumb, but Sahan knew that she pushed Hyan off the rooftop on purpose. Yunseo denied it and begged him to believe her, but Sahan decided to punish her for ruining his plans. When Untae and Hyan got to the school, they felt something was off. He reminded her of when they first visited the school, noting that the principal had blackout curtains, likely meaning Sahan had bribed the principal. They both looked up and saw that all the students had already been turned into vampires. Hyan suddenly heard a loud scream. Yunseo was tossed out of the building as she begged Sahan not to kill her. She quickly ran to Hyan. After that, Sahan stepped out and addressed Hyan as pure blood. He swore to finish the job this time, but Hyan was just as ready to kill him. He then told her to prove her strength against his minions. In an instant, all the vampire students rushed toward Hyan and Untae. Sahan noticed that she didn't want to face the students, so he ordered them to bite her to pieces. But he was shocked when he saw that his minions weren't moving. Suddenly, he felt an overwhelming force that ripped through his body. He saw that Hyan didn't need to attack to stop the students. This made him wonder why she didn't fight back at the demolition zone. He assumed that she wasn't ready to face the hypnosis back then, but felt confident because no one had ever evaded his hypnosis. She called out Sahan for ruining the lives of the students and promised to make his death less painful if he freed them. He asked if she had any idea what it was like for the kids to live as powerful humans, because in contrast, she was born as a vampire. He added that the students had miserable lives and traumatic experiences, but no one offered to rescue them. He felt they were better off this way, believing he gave them a chance to live 5 happy years. However, Hyan was tired of his flimsy justifications. She told Untae to take Yunseo somewhere safe. Back then, when Untae figured out why Yunseo wasn't completely affected by Sahan's hypnosis, it was because she had lost her hearing, and this gave Hyan an idea of how to defeat the Angel of Death. Before Sahan could snap his fingers and hypnotize her, she would attack him immediately. He was confused about what had happened to him, and told Hyan that she was being unfair, but he felt getting punched by a pureblood wasn't so bad. Hyan told him that she only punched him with a fraction of her true power, because she wanted to make sure his death was slow and painful. She leapt toward and overwhelmed him with powerful strikes, but she suddenly fell under his hypnosis. It didn't make sense, because she had attacked him before he snapped his fingers. However, Sahan revealed snapping his fingers wasn't the only trigger for his hypnosis. He used the phrase, "listen to me," to activate it. It was a trigger phrase that caused an unbearable amount of pain. She couldn't move her body, but still believed she could break free. Out of nowhere, she saw a black monster attacking Father Michael, and looking closer, she realized it was herself. Father Michael grabbed her and said she needed to die to end all the misfortune she had caused everyone. Sahan could tell that she was going through something unbearable, but it was time for the main event, and he wanted to see the heart of a pureblood. Hyan struggled as her hand moved to her chest. Meanwhile, Yunseo told Untae that she was scared for Hyan. She had experienced how Sahan used her traumas against her, and she thought she was going to die then. She felt Hyan was in danger, but Untae wasn't worried. He told her that Hyan was a lot stronger than she thought, and at this moment, Hyeon surprisingly broke through the hypnosis again. When she was hypnotized, she promised to make up for all that Father Michael accused her of. She swore to keep on living, to make the world better again. Father Michael began disappearing, and she started seeing some familiar faces. Eventually, she broke out of Sahan's hypnosis, leaving him confused and scared. His hypnosis was designed to completely take over the target's mind, and the technique he had designed for vampires was particularly potent. Sahan realized this was why everyone wanted Hyeon's heart. She made it clear that she had no intention of running away from her traumatic past. As Sahan staggered, Hyeon noticed that he had used up all of his energy. She had expected more from an angel of death, since it wasn't so hard to break free. However, Sahan suddenly brought out more minions, and Hyeon noticed that they weren't the students. Sahan admitted that he wasn't as physically strong as other vampires, but before he became an angel of death, he was trapped with some other vampires in an unknown place. All of them were forced to watch the same vampire videos on loop for days. He wondered if they were going to be eaten or used as guinea pigs. He was exhausted, and he thought he would die before he reached the end of his lifespan. As they got to their final test, a female vampire showed up and told him they wouldn't be killed, making him wonder if she read his mind. She approached with some guards and told them they had been called here because of their unique abilities. She asked if they had heard about God, and one of the vampires answered God was like a mob boss that controlled the vampires. One of the guards quickly grabbed his mouth for talking rudely about their master and squeezed his face till the guy dropped. After that, the female vampire said one of them would be chosen to be an angel of death. Sahan's chest pounded, and he wondered if he was really going to get this opportunity. He doubted he could ever become a leader after having lived like gutter trash. He would decide to give the test his best shot because it was a golden opportunity. He planned to take out all the misery he had felt in life on everyone. As the female vampire released a group of monkeys, she gave them a test to remove a monkey's heart with their minds. They quickly got to it, and Sahan struggled to get the monkey to listen to him. In the end, he couldn't do it, but surprisingly was chosen. The other vampires complained, but it turned out that Sahan had hypnotized the vampire guards. The woman was amazed by his skill, which was why he was chosen. Hyeon felt the earth rumble beneath her feet as a swarm of people walked through the city. Sahan claimed he could control the entire city if he wanted. He gave Hyeon the choice to either rip out her heart or let the innocent people rip out their own hearts. As she got surrounded, she thought his tricks didn't matter as long as she attacked first. Sahan asked if he brought up suppressed memories when she was hypnotized. This made Hyeon wonder if those were memories before she turned 10. But the Angel of Death just continued to taunt her. Meanwhile, Yunseo questioned if all the people being hypnotized were vampires, but Untae explained they were just normal people under hypnosis. There were two kinds of vampires, those with exceptional strength and those with supernatural abilities. It was usually difficult for regular vampires to beat those with supernatural abilities, but Untae said there was an exception to this rule. Back at the school, Hyeon tried to talk things out with Sahan, but the numbers were in his favor, and he hypnotized everyone there to kill themselves if he died. He felt he had backed Hyeon into a corner, seeing her frustrated look. But he was shocked when she chose death. Not her death, but the death of everyone here. Sahan didn't expect that response, but he felt Hyeon wouldn't choose that unless she had a trick up her sleeve. So he decided to make the people rip their hearts out. He then dashed towards Hyeon and slammed her to the ground. He felt a pureblood wasn't a match for him as he beat her up. But the tables had turned on him. Hyeon revealed that she had mastered his technique, saying hypnosis was easier than it looked. Sahan didn't understand. Hyeon then snapped her fingers, causing his hand to move toward his chest. He couldn't believe that she had picked up his ability just by watching him, especially when he had spent years perfecting it, pushing his brain to its limits. Since this was his ability, he was confident that he could easily break out. He wondered when he fell under Hyeon's hypnosis and why it was so powerful. At that moment, she dashed to his face and punched him. As he flew through the air, she grabbed him by the neck. Sahan then smugly told her that she wouldn't be able to handle all those repressed memories, but she squeezed his neck, saying he had bigger things to worry about. She then punched him so hard, it shattered the entire foundation of the school. The next day, Yunseo sent a text to Hyeon, telling her that she was in a government facility now with her schoolmates. They weren't allowed to see people from outside, and she was still adjusting to it. But for the first time in her life, she could easily sleep without nightmares. Untae explained that the government would make the students' lives stress-free for the 5 years they had left. He also pointed out that Sahan became an angel of death because he was angry at patients for not doing what they were advised to do. But now they had their chance to attack the other Angels of Death, who were rattled because they were being taken out. He then asked Hyeon how she awakened the power within her. She recalled her powers came when she regained some of her lost memories, but ultimately she wasn't sure. Before Eun-tae could talk about holding back on his smoking habits for her, she was already gone. He sighed, thinking it was sure hard to become friends with her. The next day, Eun-tae started his weekend morning routine by polishing his bikes. Hyeon approached him, asking if he had heard about the recent incident where a vampire locked up people in a basement. Eun-tae explained that the culprit targeted influential students at each college in the STEM field, and was said to be looking for arts and physical education students next. After she heard this, she felt the case was connected to the Angels of Death, because they mostly planned kills around specific preferences. However, Eun-tae thought it was possible it had nothing to do with them. He then suddenly asked Hyeon out for a dinner date. Sneaking into his office, Hyeon thought something was weird about his reaction and assumed that he was hiding something from her. So, she decided to look around for a clue. She saw some transfer notes from someone known as Hyun-chul Song. She would also come across a lot of bank passports and contracts. She hoped it didn't mean what she was thinking. After that, she also noticed the vitamin pills that Eun-tae took daily. Elsewhere, aspiring fashion designer and college student Ha-eun showed her boyfriend, Hyung-sung, how much money she made for the week, and it was enough to pay her bills for the month. She also showed him the photos from all the modeling gigs she had gotten. After that, the guy decided to stay the night at her place, and she answered she might let him if he paid her. Their spicy moment was cut short when they heard a loud bang on the door. As the guy went to check it out, he joked that it might be a vampire. He got to the door, but Hyeon noticed he was trembling. She shoved him out of the way and looked through the peephole, but there was no one there. Meanwhile, Eun-tae took Hyeon to a restaurant where she was offered soup made from ox blood. She looked at the soup and remembered Father Michael would make it for her occasionally. She quickly pulled herself together, not trying to reminisce too long. Eun-tae then got a work call from someone who wanted his task force to catch a vampire. After the call, he told Hyeon that his family had been attacked by vampires, which was why he put a lot of effort into his work. As he started eating, Hyeon didn't touch her food because she needed to double check something. She noticed the moment Eun-tae would get up and excuse himself to the bathroom. He went outside and threw up, thinking he had brought the wrong pills. As Hyeon checked up on him, he said that his stomach was upset, but she suspected he was someone who couldn't eat regular food. She revealed that she added more vitamins to his bottle, having suspected something was off because he knew too much about vampires. She also asked him about the transfers between him and Hyun-chul Song. She questioned if he was just trying to use her from the start. But the most obvious clue she had was when he mentioned how regular food stops blood circulation for vampires. After that, Eun-tae revealed that he was a vampire, confirming Hyeon's suspicions. She then asked him if he served one of the Angels of Death, and she would only beat him up depending on his answer. But Eun-tae questioned if she'd be able to handle the truth about who he was. Eun-tae then offered to tell her everything if she could beat him in a fight, but she wasn't in the mood. However, Eun-tae wanted to know how strong she truly was. She felt he must have had something up his sleeve to challenge her, and decided to make him answer her questions. After overpowering him, she dashed toward him, but surprisingly, Eun-tae was fast enough to evade and strike back. She dodged in time, and could tell that he wasn't an ordinary vampire. As she grabbed his neck, she wondered why he didn't evade this time. Eun-tae felt she was underestimating him because she was holding back. He pointed out that he still had an advantage, which was his technique. The restaurant owner would interrupt their fight, misreading them doing something spicy in the back. Hyeon decided to take their talk outside, but Eun-tae was already gone. She went back to the house, but he wasn't there either, and she still didn't know who he truly was. She came across a lease agreement and saw Hyun-chul's name again, and wondered if it had something to do with the basement imprisonment case. The address gave her a clue. She was shocked to arrive at a perfectly normal neighborhood. She walked around for an hour without finding anything suspicious, but still feared Eun-tae was putting up an act as one of God's minions trying to ensnare her. He had supported her and even lent her a hand, even though she was a vampire. When she had no information about the Angels of Death, he also helped, but she decided it was best for her not to get too close to anyone, since she was used to being disappointed. Suddenly, she heard someone screaming to be let go. Meanwhile, Eun-tae returned home and saw that Hyeon had gone through all his files. He then got a message that left him shocked. Back in the neighborhood, a building had gone up in flames. It was Hyeon's place, and she begged to be let go because she wanted to go back and get something important to her. Hyeon asked what it was, and Haon answered it was a steel box. She then poured a bucket of water on herself and rushed into the building. Bad idea, by the way. Regular humans would probably get steam burns. Later on, Haon thanked her for retrieving the box. Haon was curious to see what was inside, so Haon showed her it was mostly filled with patches she put on her clothes. She said they were more important to her than money because her dream was to become a fashion designer. Suddenly, Euntae came running towards them, and Haon wondered how he knew where she was. He then revealed that Haon was his sister, but she wasn't too happy to see him, calling him a murderer. Haon was shocked that they were siblings, and even more confused about Haon calling her brother a murderer. Haon advised her to ditch Euntae before he abandoned her. Haon then asked Euntae to explain, but before he could, Hyung-sung ran in and interrupted them. He tried to make sure his girlfriend was alright, and she said she would go to the police station to give a statement. Euntae would then interrupt them and introduce himself, squeezing the guy's hand, while he asked questions like where he lived and how long they'd been dating. Euntae's expression became terrifying as he asked Hyung-sung if he was a vampire. But Haon smacked him and said he couldn't just show up in her life again, pretending like he cared. That night, Euntae sat under the rain while he jingled the keychain. It meant a lot to him. It was a gift from his sister. It all happened in the middle of summer, about 5 years after vampires first appeared. At the police academy, their teacher said it was difficult for the vampire task force to keep up with the rate new vampires were appearing. He felt vampires were worse than the mafia, being no longer human. Euntae's friends suggested getting drinks after classes. They were jealous of him for being at the top of the class. One of them even feared that he might join the vampire task force. But Euntae doubted it. The world had changed completely, and classes at the academy changed with it. Despite those changes, he hadn't felt the weight of his badge yet. Euntae would leave his friends and meet up with his sister, who was super happy to see him. She showed him the keychain she made and said fashion was what she wanted to do for a living ever since their family split. This was the first time Haon had mentioned something she wanted to do. Euntae wanted to help her pursue her dream, and that was why he decided to become a detective. Later on, they would have dinner with their parents. It had been 4 years since they ate as a family, and their dad apologized for being such a bad father. Their father used to run a bed and breakfast, but it went down after the vampires wreaked havoc on society. Their family was in a lot of debt, causing them to live apart. Euntae had taken care of his sister, who relied on him, and it made them grow closer. One day, he saw her crying and realized that people could also cry when they were happy. He thought their struggles were finally over after they went through so much. But it all changed one night. He left his room and noticed that his parents were still awake. When he walked into the room, he couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. His parents were vampires, and they were feeding on an innocent man. Euntae's heart pounded heavily. He was sure there had to be an explanation for what he saw, and quickly hid before his parents could see him. He thought it was all a bad dream, and that he would wake up, but continued hiding while his parents looked around. Luckily, they didn't see him. By law, they had to report any vampires they saw immediately. But that night, Euntae couldn't do anything. The next day, at the academy, the teacher explained that vampires had formed organizations and tried to gain social influence. He pointed out that vulnerable groups and orphans were the highest risk targets. However, Euntae couldn't concentrate on the lecture. He knew he had to report them even though they were his family. It was his duty as a member of society, but no matter how much he tried, he couldn't report them. His friends joked about becoming vampires, and he warned them to take vampires more seriously. Euntae was on edge and stuck in limbo, unable to decide what to do, until one day he was forced to make a decision. He had gone to the beach with Haon, but he didn't want to get into the water. He couldn't relax because his parents were also there. They would have suspected him if he refused to come, so he had to keep an eye on Haon and protect her. He wondered how he could explain the situation to his sister, but decided to focus on getting safely back home. His mother would approach him, asking if he was alright, but he told her that he was just stressed about his final semester at the academy. Euntae didn't believe in God, but he prayed just in case there was a God out there. He prayed that they would keep Haon safe at least. On their way back home, he didn't understand why his parents came back as vampires after 4 years. He wondered what could have happened to them, but decided to take Haon somewhere safe once they were back in Seoul. Sadly, their car broke down in the middle of the road. Their mom pointed out a house in the distance and suggested asking the people there for help, but Euntae interjected, saying they didn't know the kind of people that lived there. Suddenly, a man approached them and said he lived in the house they were talking about. The man took them in and said the other people in the village moved somewhere safer. However, he felt he was safer from the vampires here. Haon was scared of the man, but he told them they could either come inside or sleep in the car. Entering, Eun-tae couldn't sleep because the whole situation was suspicious. He also felt something was strange about the village. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside and wondered if it was his parents. He grabbed his taser and headed outside, where he saw a faint light in the distance. When they first arrived, the place wasn't lit up, so he followed their footsteps, and despite having a bad feeling, he was determined to get to the bottom of this. After walking for a while, he stumbled upon a church in the middle of nowhere. This didn't look like a place of worship. The building was odd compared to the rest of the village. He walked in and suddenly came across a group of vampires feasting on a body. He refused to believe that the two creatures he saw were his parents, so he decided he would grab Haon and leave the village, but would get caught by the man who took them in. As the man grabbed his shoulder, Eun-tae realized he was a vampire too. Eun-tae believed in his strength and tried to remove the man's hand, but the man was far stronger. Eun-tae had heard about the strength of vampires, but he didn't think they'd be this strong. He panicked and started thinking of a way to get out alive. The man then took him to the church, where Eun-tae's parents were shocked to see him. The man told them that Eun-tae had decided to become a vampire. When his parents asked, Eun-tae told them it was true. His parents seemed happy and realized he was the one who had seen them the previous night. After that, the huge man said he had to drink the blood of a vampire to become one. Eun-tae tried to stall the process, but one of the vampires provided blood quickly. Caught in a tight spot, Eun-tae didn't know what to do. The huge man told him to drink up as his heart raced. So, Eun-tae decided he didn't have any other choice. He zapped the vampire in front of him and slammed him into the ground. He then told the man that he hated being ordered around. As the vampires rushed at him, his parents stopped them and tried to talk to their son. Eun-tae's mother explained that their lives had been horrible for the past 4 years because they had to live like animals. But it all changed once they became vampires. All they worried about was their children. She wanted them all to live as a happy family. Eun-tae told her that for the 4 years they were gone, he and Haon had to bounce between relatives' homes. He only kept going because he hoped they would be a family again one day. He then revealed he already called the police, not caring about their tragic backstory, and told his parents that they shouldn't have come back into their lives. Suddenly, the police officers barged into the building. Eun-tae explained that he was the only human here, but was shocked when he saw the officers calmly talking to the huge vampire, and quickly realized that the local police were not on his side. He blocked the vampire's sudden attack, but all his bones broke. As he tried to calm down and escape, the huge vampire would show up in his face, saying that humans were inferior to vampires. The vampire pierced through Eun-tae's shoulder, leaving him unable to move. After that, they discussed using his sister as a blood bag. Eun-tae crawled to his parents and told them they were supposed to protect Haon. He told them how devastated she would be if she saw what they had become. His dad knelt and apologized for not being a better father. Eun-tae told them they could still do the right thing and turn themselves in. But his parents were only concerned about the blood they needed to survive. They believed their leader would help them live longer. But Eun-tae laughed at them, saying they'd been fooled. He pointed out that their leader only had 3 months left to live because his hands were swollen. Vampires would usually swell up when they were close to the end of their lives. Eun-tae's father still believed that their leader was immortal, but the man trembled and yelled that he still had at least a year to live, which proved he wasn't immortal. The man's reaction proved him right. His parents realized that they had been lied to, and they leapt towards the leader, but the huge vampire smashed both of them to the ground. Eun-tae's parents were dead, and he had lost too much blood, and he struggled to stop the vampires from attacking Haon. He recalled when he and his sister had to move to another relative's house. Their aunt put them in a cramped room that wasn't even enough for one person. However, Haon was happy because it was much better than the last place they stayed. Eun-tae didn't have much to say about it. Even when they were given little food, Haon was grateful. It had only been 2 years since the vampires started appearing, and the whole country was in a state of emergency. One day, those built-up tensions boiled over. Haon argued with her aunt's son because the boy told everyone that their parents had become vampires. When her aunt came in, Haon tried to explain, but her aunt smacked her and asked if she had any proof that her parents weren't vampires. Eun-tae returned home and saw that his sister's face was full of bruises, but she told him it was fine because she didn't want to move. After that, the sirens blared. She wondered when they wouldn't need sirens anymore. She asked Eun-tae if their parents were really vampires, because if that was true, it would make her sad and angry. But her brother assured her that their parents weren't. That night, he waited silently outside until Haon was done crying. After seeing her suffer like that, he promised himself to always protect her no matter what. His thoughts drifted back to reality, because he was slowly losing consciousness. He wondered if this was how he was going to die. He wept and apologized for not being able to save his sister. But he couldn't let himself die like this. So he finally drank his mother's blood, and his body began changing. He couldn't breathe, and he felt like he was gonna burst, but all he could think about was his sister. Meanwhile, Haon ran from the vampires chasing her while she looked for her family. She bumped into the leader and fell to the ground. He held her in the air, and she passed out. Suddenly, he saw a police officer's body flung through the air. A huge explosion came out of nowhere, and as the dust settled, the vampire leader saw Eun-tae, who told him to let go of his sister. The vampire leader didn't understand how Eun-tae was already fully transformed. It usually took at least a month. Eun-tae threatened to tear his limbs apart if he didn't release Haon. The leader admitted that he didn't stand a chance against Eun-tae, but still felt he held all the cards. He signaled to one of the other vampires and threatened to kill Haon. But before he could do anything, Eun-tae sliced off his hand. The leader then told him that he shouldn't have turned his back on the enemy. And suddenly, Eun-tae was caught in an electric net. He fell to the ground and screamed in pain. The leader of the vampires blamed Eun-tae's parents for blocking his path to becoming an angel of death. He told his followers to kill Eun-tae, while he decided to use Haon as a sacrifice. But he couldn't believe his eyes when Eun-tae broke out of the net. After that, Eun-tae killed all the vampires and tore apart their leader with no issues. He reached for his sister, but then hesitated. He believed it was too late, and that nothing would be the same because he was now a vampire. He would later put her in the car and drive away. When Haon woke up, she asked about their parents and what happened to the vampires, but Eun-tae couldn't speak. She saw his eyes and screamed in fear, realizing what he was. Eun-tae hid the truth about their parents, even when the police asked for a statement. He thought having one vampire left in his family was still one too many, and wasn't sure if it was because Haon couldn't forgive him for not telling her what happened, but she moved out shortly afterwards. He told Haon that this was why his sister hated him, but she reasoned his sister would have turned him in a long time ago if she really hated him deep down. This was why Eun-tae had been working hard for the past 4 years to make the world a better place, where his sister could feel safe and happy. This was why he needed Haon's help. He said he avoided drinking blood to hide the fact he was a vampire, but as for how he found out about Haon, it was a secret. He then apologized for putting pressure on her to help him. As she left, he remained outside and pondered about how he had only 6 months left to live. Meanwhile, Haon went to Hyun-sung's place, and he allowed her to stay until she found a new one. He asked her how her brother knew her house was on fire, and how he knew Haon, but Haon was only thinking about finishing her assignment. She then asked Hyun-sung how he knew her house was on fire, and he explained that he saw the smoke on his way to her place. Then, with a menacing look, told her that he was happy she came here. The next day, Haon tried calling Haon multiple times, but she wasn't picking up. Eun-tae told her she could go check up on his sister, because he knew she wouldn't be happy to see him. All the while, Haon was tied up by her boyfriend, who told her about his debts. He said the loan sharks would at least keep her alive once he offered her to them. He yelled at her, worried that they might harvest his organs, but promised he would come back later to save her. He had already set up the deal, and was scared that Eun-tae found out his plan. Then suddenly, Eun-tae showed up right behind him. Hyun-sung freaked out and asked how he found out. At the same time, Haon was only happy to see Hayan, but remained silent when she looked at her brother. Hyun-sung would try to attack her, but Eun-tae stopped him and slammed the guy to the wall. Eun-tae explained that when they first met, he wondered why the guy wasn't sweating after he said he ran a long distance. His hands were cold, which made him even more suspicious. So he checked the security footage and found out that Hyun-sung was the one who set the fire. Eun-tae gave him 2 choices. It was either he handed over the ledgers for his business and went to jail, or he would become a well-known underwear thief. Eun-tae threatened to send an article and photo to the press, which he had already typed out. As he dragged the guy out, Haon asked if Eun-tae knew how she felt to receive help from their uncles all these years. She confronted him, asking Eun-tae why he pretended to be the said uncle all the while. On a previous night, Hayan revealed this secret to Haon, that her brother had been posing as their uncle, providing her a house and financial support. Eun-tae's actions reminded Hayan of Father Michael. She didn't want the siblings to have the same regrets she did. Haon told Hayan she was a good person, even though she poked her nose into other people's business. Hayan then revealed her vampire form, and told the girl that she and Eun-tae were going to save the world, no matter how long it took. Back in the room, Untae asked how Haon had found out and tried to deny what she now knew. He used the excuse he was just here because of a crime and promised she would never see him again once he was done dealing with it. As he walked out, she saw the keychain she had made for him years ago. Back then, she just wanted to give Untae something she was proud of making, but her friend told her it wasn't a good gift. This made her wonder if she was being thoughtless, so she kept it in her desk and thought about it for a few days. The day Untae came to pick her up, she still contemplated whether to give him the gift or not. She gave him the keychain and asked if he preferred wallets instead, which he did. But he showed her that he appreciated her gift. She then held onto her brother, asking why he didn't come find her sooner. She cried her heart out, asking him why he made her hold a grudge against him, but Untae was too sad to speak. The arrest of Hyun-sung led to the capture of the broker and other vampires. Untae then arranged to have the kidnapped students placed under police protection for a month. His colleagues asked if he was okay because Untae was shaking nervously, and he said he was fine. He was supposed to have dinner with his sister and hoped it wouldn't be too awkward. After all, they were close when they were young. When he got home, the entire situation felt awkward for him, but he kept his cool. He decided to act like nothing had happened and talked to his sister like he always did. He dangled a piece of meat on Haon's face, just like old times, but this of course upset her. He felt wanting things to go back to normal was probably asking for too much. So he decided to consider himself lucky that he even got to have dinner with her. He was grateful to Haon for bringing them together, but he believed his relationship with Haon was irreparable. Going upstairs, Haon showed him the decorations Haon had done. It reminded Untae of the last time he had a meal with his family. He couldn't believe that she went out of her way to recreate that night. Haon felt awkward since she was the only one eating grilled meat. But Untae thought to himself that things had always been like this. All he did was worry, while his sister took the initiative to do something for him first. He apologized to her and vowed to turn the world back to normal. She responded by tossing a piece of meat on his face. As they both laughed it out, Haon felt more at ease. She decided to call it a night and left the two siblings to bond. After that, elsewhere, Sahan demanded the purebloods' blood from the other angels of death. The other vampires felt he was useless and told him to leave. Sahan was more shocked at the fact that God wasn't here. Ash walked up to him and told him to come back once he recovered. With her wiping the blood on his lips, Sahan slammed her on the table and threatened to tear her to pieces. Ash told him to let her go because she made a living off of her looks, but he decided he would drink the blood from her veins since angels of death had the pureblood's blood in them. She told him that drinking her blood would have nasty side effects, but he was willing to take that chance. He hypnotized Ash and told her that she should have just stuck to acting. But Ash would reveal that this was all an act, and she wasn't affected by his ability. Then, Sahan's face looked old because of her power. She transformed her face into his own, and his body disintegrated. She wondered how he never figured out that his life was being sucked out. After that, she returned to her seat. Then, she and the other vampires looked at the images of Haon and Untae, wondering how they had formed such a close relationship. Ash thought it was romantic and wanted to pay them a visit. Young Sung was a famous actress who had featured in many campaigns for famous brands in the past year. She was a flawless celebrity in a class of her own. After performing an amazing stunt on a movie set, the crew commended her because not even a stuntman could do what she did. They could hardly believe she was able to pull it off without any wires. She was perfect, except no one liked her attitude. Her boyfriend walked up to her and asked why there was news about them breaking up. The two had once talked about getting married. It made him believe the rumors about her playing with people's hearts and dumping them were true. Haeyoung said he was unattractive when he got like this, which is why she lost interest. The guy told her she deserved to die at the hands of a vampire, but she threatened to show him what it felt like for a vampire to suck out his life if he didn't stop, causing him to fall over. On her ride home, her driver told her that he had taken care of the scandal between her and Bong Gyum Choi, and the issue with her ex-boyfriend from the lighting department. Now the ex misunderstood and thought everything was his own fault. The driver then saw two people arguing. One of them was a guy who told the girl in front that she couldn't run away without paying what she owed. When Aeong heard the guy insulting the poor girl, she told the driver to stop. She got down and threw some money at the bald guy's face, asking if that was enough to pay off the girl's debt. The guy was shocked to see an actual celebrity in front of him, but she would tell him to buzz off and stop blocking the road. Then told the girl who was being bullied to leave the neighborhood and never return. The guy then grabbed Aeong, and she told him to get his hands off of her. As the guy tried to hit her, she dodged him and pushed him against a wall. He thought she was into him, but she simply rubbed his lips and threatened to rip him to shreds. She got back in her car and left while the guy's body was bloodied and dead. Meanwhile, the entire police station was on high alert because Sahan had broken out of jail. Untae said they put a tracker in Sahan's body, but when they got to the location, all that remained were burnt remains of the tracker. Hyeon could tell that whoever killed Sahan was really powerful. Since the Angels of Death followed an implicit hierarchy, the person above Sahan was Ash. But Untae said that it was strange that they had no information on Ash, unlike the other Angels of Death. All they had was a picture of her when she was younger. Due to this, they needed to be vigilant. Leaving the office, Hyeon reminded Untae of the fight they had at the restaurant. She told him she was glad that he wasn't working for God, and then shortly leapt to the rooftops to head home. Aeong would then approach Untae and tell him she wanted to file a police report for people who harassed her online. He told her that she needed to go through the main entrance and to the second floor. She asked if he knew who she was, and he did. As he excused himself, Aeong drew him back, saying he had something on his lower lip, and then reached for it. She had a weird expression, getting closer, but Untae leaned back and told her he didn't want to end up on celebrity gossip sites. She complimented his looks, asking if he had ever been on TV, but all he did was tell her to respect his personal space. Hyeon would then approach them, and Aeong got even more excited seeing the pureblood. She asked what the relationship was between them because they seemed close, and made the excuse she had a hard time getting along with other people. Hyeon would then tell Aeong that anyone would be happy to have her as a friend. This made Aeong recall her best friend in the past. She then tried to use the same technique on Hyeon, but was shocked when it didn't work. She looked down at her burnt finger, realizing that she couldn't drain Hyeon's energy. It made her more interested in both Hyeon and Untae. Later on, Hyeon found out Ash's real identity after comparing her photos with other women in Seoul. Ash's real name was Jinha Kim, and she was raised in an orphanage. However, they found out that she died 7 years ago, which meant she was living under a false identity. Untae said that the orphanage that Ash grew up in could give them some clues. Hyeon then decided she would look more into the orphanage. Meanwhile, Aeong returned to her home. She smashed her piano to bits as soon as she recalled Hyeon's face, and told Vael to say what he had to quickly. He was surprised at how different she was when the cameras weren't rolling, then said that God had ordered her not to jump the gun. Vael pointed out that Hyeon wasn't someone she could beat on her own. His words made her furious, and she threatened to kill him like Sahan if he didn't leave. Her threats also made him angry, and they were both ready to fight. She then told him to order his lion to get back, threatening that she would turn him into jerky. Vael calmed down his pet, and told Aeong that he didn't come to fight, reminding her of the importance of what they were about to do. On the other hand, Untae tried to figure out why Jinha killed herself. He questioned what her role was, wondering if she trained the newly transformed vampires. He then got a text from Hyeon, saying she needed to talk to him about something. She entered, and Untae noticed she was a bit gloomy. She told him that her body was feeling different ever since she fought Sahan. Her wounds weren't healing as fast. And dropping her shirt a bit, she asked Untae to help her take a look. Untae quickly told her to put her shirt back on, because this wasn't like her. It wasn't Hyeon in front of him, but Aeong, who had stolen her looks. She suddenly fell to the ground, telling Untae that her body was in so much pain, adding that she might die if she didn't drink human blood. Untae tried to tell her to resist the temptation because she would get addicted, but she yelled out, complaining about how agonizing it was to resist the urge to drink. However, Untae would put her shirt back on and offer himself as a source of blood for her. She quickly grabbed his neck and pushed him to the floor, warning that he would die if she bit him. But Untae didn't care, as long as it made her feel better. His actions reminded her of her childhood best friend. Afterwards, Aeong got up and decided to call it a night. Leaving, Untae panicked because he realized that was Ash all along. While he thought about Ash's abilities, Hyeon entered the room, and he quickly asked some questions to make sure it was the real Hyeon. Untae then told her about the attack, but she couldn't deal with it now because they needed to check out the orphanage right away. Meanwhile, on the set of a film, one of the actors was yelling at his colleague for trying to stand out. While he kept yelling, Ash asked how long he would keep yapping, but when he confronted her, she acted like she didn't say anything. The guy then suggested that she use a stunt double for the scene today so she doesn't make life difficult for the crew. However, Ash stepped on his shoes and told him to take his own advice. As she left, the guy picked up a stick, planning to give her a little scare during the scene. Filming began, and the guy started attacking Ash viciously. She could tell that he was messing with her and decided to play along. The guy then leapt into the air to smash her head, but he suddenly got sent crashing into the wall. As the director tried to clear the smoke, he tried to figure out what had hit him. Ash then stomped the ground, causing the stones around her to float, and then sent them flying towards the actor, just enough to leave him trembling. She then walked up to him and warned him to keep his head down. After filming, she headed to her car in the garage, where she suddenly met Eun-tae. He told her that he was investigating a case of breaking and entering. She tried to act innocent, but Hyeon told her they already knew everything about her and referred to her as Jinha Kim. Hearing that, Ash threatened to kill Hyeon on the spot. Hyeon revealed that Ash and the real Aeong Song lived at the Big Heart Orphanage together, and they both dreamed of being actresses. But Ash killed Aeong and stole her identity. With threatening eyes, Ash asked if she had any evidence to back up her claims. But Hyeon answered she wouldn't get away with it. Ash then stomped the ground and used the stones to smash all the security cameras and dash cams in the area. Hyeon's words riled up the Angel of Death, causing her to leap towards our girl and attack. The explosion caused the elevators to lock up, but Eun-tae knew it wouldn't hold people off for long. Meanwhile, Hyeon dodged the attack, causing Ash to smash the wall. She could tell Ash was fast, but sensed that something was off. She kept dodging the attacks, which left Ash confused. Hyeon decided to keep provoking her until she could figure out what was wrong. As Ash rushed at her recklessly, Eun-tae decided to help and end the fight quickly. But Hyeon blasted Ash away with one devastating punch. Ash's appearance faded, revealing that it wasn't really her. The man who was underneath told Hyeon that it would all be over the next day, but she wondered what he meant by that. The man had a camera on him, which meant Ash was watching them from somewhere else. She was already in a car driving away. Her body trembled and sweat ran all over as she watched the fight. She wondered if she would have survived if it was actually her in that parking lot. Her heart raced, realizing Hyeon's true strength. She smashed the window of the car, then decided that she would finish what she started the following day. The next day, the streets were filled with people protesting against vampires. Eun-tae and Hyeon walked the streets, and Hyeon couldn't stop thinking about what the imposter told her the previous day. She then told Eun-tae that she felt guilty about the protesters, thinking everything was her fault. She now started thinking she should have kept the statement to herself, because Eun-tae probably didn't know what to say. He answered that even if she was the reason more vampires were created, the ones committing the crimes were at fault, not her. Afterwards, people started getting messages on their phones, and a live broadcast started playing in the city. Eun-tae and Hyeon were shocked to see Ash posing to be Hyeon, confessing to being a vampire on the big screen. Murmurs erupted everywhere, because this was the first time someone had revealed that they were a vampire. Hyeon's imposter went ahead to say that she ended up drinking human blood, and she also confessed that she was a pureblood. The crowd became furious, which scared the real Hyeon because she had never tasted a drop of human blood. As the comments got worse, Hyeon couldn't breathe, so she decided that she needed to leave the place. The crowd demanded that she be killed, and she yelled out, saying that they were wrong. Eun-tae quickly comforted her with a hug, and she asked him what she should do. He told her that no one knew she was the person in the broadcast, so they stayed still for a bit. Meanwhile, Vael was watching the broadcast as Ash returned home. He said that they would have accomplished everything they planned to do in a few months, and then asked Ash why she didn't reveal more about the fact that Hyeon was a pureblood. She answered it was none of his business. He then reminded her that God was testing her, and reminded her what would happen if she wasn't able to prove herself. Regardless, Ash said she was ready to face the test. Later on, Hyeon came to her former school. She didn't think she would ever come back, but decided to do what she came for and leave. When she heard some students saying they knew who the girl on the TV was, she quickly hid her face. Ever since the broadcast, she's been feeling like everyone was staring at her. She's been very paranoid, and was sure that her friends and siblings were shocked by the interview. She needed to tell them that the person they saw on TV wasn't her, but wondered if they would believe her, and if they still thought of her as their friend. She saw some journalists interviewing her friends So and Min Jae and quickly hid herself. Then heard her friends saying they felt betrayed because she hid something so important from them. They only felt betrayed because they still thought of her as a friend and wanted to help her through the tough times. They had caught a glimpse of her while she was still hiding and hoped they'd be able to meet again. Later, Hyeon met Yoon-soo, whose face looked beat up. He tried to explain that it was because the other kids found out Hyeon was a vampire, but Yurim cut him off. Hyeon apologized to them, taking all the blame. Yurin would tell her that she hadn't seen her smile ever since Father Michael died, and Hyeon felt she had lost the right to smile like she used to. Yurim then said that Father Michael wouldn't want to see her this way, and would probably tell her to wipe the frown off her face. They wanted Hyeon to smile like she always used to. At night, Hyeon curled up by the side of her bed and told Father Michael that she didn't know what to do. She felt scared, felt it was better to rip out her own heart so that no one close to her would have to suffer. Father Michael told her to go for it and said he wouldn't stop her if it made her feel better. She admitted that she couldn't live among humans, but Father Michael pointed out that she hadn't let go of her desire to look human. She needed to let it all go if she wanted to reach her full potential. Meanwhile, Euntae was sure that Hyeon was hurting inside and thought about how Ash went for her weak spot in the broadcast. He had never seen Hyeon look so vulnerable before. He felt he couldn't understand what she was going through and blamed himself for not being able to help her. Haeun then brought out a bunch of wigs and glasses, telling her brother that Hyeon could use them as disguises. But he didn't think Hyeon would want that. Suddenly, she told him to look outside, and they ran out and saw Hyeon in her full vampire form on a bike. She told him she wouldn't bother with a disguise because nobody would suspect she was a vampire because of her white hair. This made Euntae feel there was no need to worry about her. Elsewhere, Ash figured Hyeon would find a way to overcome her setback, so she ordered her clones to destroy Euntae's house before dispersing. Euntae told Hyeon to wait because they needed to think things through since they knew nothing about Ash. Hyeon then showed him a text and the location she got from Ash. At the given location, she was patiently waiting for them. Ash declined her colleague's request to drink with them. She recalled when she and the other Angels of Death were discussing Euntae and Hyeon. When she said she wanted to visit them, Mammon asked if she had a plan, and she told him it was better than anything he could think of. After she left, Mammon then asked why Ash was so keen to get involved. Vael then told him that each of them had a clear role in the group, aside from Ash. If everything went according to plan, the world would be theirs, and Ash wouldn't want to miss out on that. Mammon also asked why they didn't hunt the pure blood as a group, to which Vael replied that it was God's order. Ash snapped back to reality, her hands trembling as she realized her fate hinged on this night. If she wasn't able to show God any impressive results, she would lose everything. She knew she had to prove her use if she wanted a seat at the table. One of the guys offered to take her mind off of things after seeing that she was anxious. She leaned in and sucked his blood, which left the other guys confused by her actions, because she always said sucking blood was beneath her. However, Ash thought that the only way to impress God was to bring him Hyeon's heart. She was determined to do just that, no matter what it took. As Euntae and Hyeon rode their bikes, the captain told her that he recovered deleted files from the chief's laptop, which referred to something called Project 0101. He wasn't sure what it was, because he had never come across it before, but it seemed like the project could be what everything was leading to. As they arrived at the location, Euntae told Hyeon to be careful because it could be a trap. Out of everyone Hyeon had faced, Ash was the only one who decided where to fight her, which made her anxious. As she confronted Ash, the Angel of Death asked why she tried so hard to fit in with the humans. Hyeon then told her that she wanted to live like a normal human girl, but the vampire organization destroyed her life. Ash then told her she deserved it because she felt her existence needed to be eradicated. After that, she stomped on the ground, causing dust to fill the air and block Hyeon's vision. She started bouncing around the place rapidly, and finally rushed in to land an attack. But Hyeon realized this was another imposter. She grabbed the imposter, saying she didn't want fake bites, and slammed him to the ground. Euntae then heard many footsteps approaching them. In the blink of an eye, Hyeon was surrounded by hundreds of Ash's clones. Euntae wondered why Ash was going to such great lengths. However, Hyeon wasn't impressed with the fakes. She admitted that there was strength in numbers, but felt it wasn't enough to threaten her. Ash asked Hyeon if she thought this would be it. A video of Euntae's house then popped up on the wall, and in a few seconds, they saw the house get blown up. Euntae quickly called his sister to make sure she was alright, and told her to stay away from the house. But Ash wasn't done with her evil plans, as she showed Hyeon's siblings tied up with a bomb strapped to them. Euntae tried to calm Hyeon as she freaked out, but they only had 30 minutes until the bomb would explode. The only way Hyeon could save them was to enter the correct code for the bomb, which only Ash knew. Because of this, Hyeon couldn't kill the fakes recklessly, but Euntae still felt like Ash was hiding something. Ash knew Hyeon was strong, but after seeing her fights with Lucian and Sahan, she also knew Hyeon couldn't use half of her innate abilities because she had lost her memories. Since all her clones were powerful, she felt they could take down Hyeon while she was surprised. The clones then leapt towards Hyeon and completely surrounded her. Ash felt the overwhelming force would crush Hyeon's bones, but Hyeon blew them all away in a second. She then told Ash that she shouldn't have gone after her family. Hyeon riled her up by referring to Ash as Jin-ha and asking why she stole Aeong-song's body. As the clones rushed at her again, she was able to pick out the real Ash and held her up in the air. She could tell which one was real, because the real Ash was the only one who looked sad. She offered to spare Ash a beatdown if she gave the code, but Ash didn't care. So, Hyeon punched her hard into the ground, causing a huge explosion. After that, she walked up to Ash, who lay defeated, and asked if this is what she wanted for herself. This made Ash recall her past. It was an ordinary night like any other, but all it took was one unlucky encounter with a vampire for her life to be changed forever. No one had noticed she had gone missing, even though she'd been away from the orphanage for 3 days. She wanted someone to look after her, but as always, no one was there for her. While she stayed in her room sobbing, Ayoung approached her and asked if something was wrong because she'd been skipping meals and not going to school. Ash had always kept a distance from Ayoung because she felt intimidated by her. However, she told Ayoung the truth that night, knowing that it could have spelled the end for her. Surprisingly, Ayoung felt sad for her. She assured Ash it would be okay, and that she was still her, regardless of what had happened. Even though Ash had given up on herself, Ayoung wasn't afraid of her, and took Ash under her wing. Ayoung gave her the support she needed to become someone new, just when she had thought her life was over. She wanted to become an actress. So, Ash decided to make it her ambition as well. Sometimes, Ayoung felt like a mother to her, and other times, like an older sister. She was the closest friend Ash had ever had. She felt like she had nothing to worry about, because Ayoung was with her every step of the way, and she called Ash her best friend. Ash thought they would always be close, but one day, it all changed. It was a stormy day when a guy met Ash and asked her where Ayoung was. Deep inside her heart, she was building a sturdy nest that could withstand harsh winds and rainstorms. It didn't matter if her life was a ticking time bomb. As long as she had Ayoung by her side, she was happy. However, she saw the guy asking Ayoung if she thought about the offer he made because his dad said she had a lot of potential. Ash didn't know Ayoung had another friend she was close with, and she had no idea what they were talking about. When she asked, Ayoung decided to take the conversation elsewhere. Despite being friends, Ash hadn't realized what was happening at the time to their relationship and what it meant. Ash eavesdropped on the conversation and heard the guy calling her ugly, but she wasn't surprised. What she saw next devastated her. Her heart pounded heavily. She never considered herself ugly, but once she saw that grimacing look on Ayoung's face, she felt like the ugliest girl in the world. Ayoung kept spending more and more time with the guy, which made Ash feel like she was trying to put distance between them. However, she felt like there had to be a reason Ayoung was acting this way. She wasn't sure if Ayoung knew how she felt, but everything went back to normal when they returned to the orphanage. Ash asked Ayoung if she had done something to upset her, but Ayoung told her there was nothing wrong. She figured she was mistaken about what she saw that day, believing Ayoung wasn't that mean to think she was ugly. The thought that someone could have taken Ayoung away from her filled her with dread, because Ayoung was the most important person in her life. However, when she tried to cuddle, Ayoung slapped her hand away and called it weird. Ash wondered why Ayoung would do this, because they'd always been cuddly. She didn't understand why her best friend was suddenly pushing her away and couldn't stop crying as she asked Ayoung why she said that. The memories of what happened flashed through her mind, causing her sadness to become rage. She lunged at Ayoung, choking her and destroying the nest she had put everything into. When she came to her senses, it was too late, because she had become Ayoung's song. Regardless, her anger wasn't quenched because she blamed Ayoung's death on the guy who stole her best friend from her. She would pose as Ayoung to see the guy, but the way he acted threw her off. The guy revealed that Ayoung wanted Ash to come with her, which put him in an awkward position. When he told her to put herself first instead of Ash, she was confused. She thought Ayoung made fun of her, but the guy revealed that Ayoung didn't like it when he insulted Ash. It was then that Ash finally saw things as they actually were, and she realized that she had forced Ayoung to give her affection and suffocated her. It was too late for regrets, because Ayoung was already gone. As the memory faded, Hyeon told her to give up because she didn't want to continue this pointless fight. But Ash asked if it was really pointless, since Hyeon needed to save her siblings. She realized that she had never seen Hyeon go all out in a fight until this moment. She thought she could rip out Hyeon's heart because she had some pure vampire blood in her veins as well. But Hyeon's overwhelming strength shocked her. Hyeon battered Ash continuously while demanding the code. At this moment, Ash recalled asking God to erase her memories. He agreed on the condition that she would complete Project 0101. She tried to forget about what happened by drinking and sleeping with other people, but it never worked. She would do anything to get rid of the memories that haunted her. After some time, she told Hyeon she would give the code, but only in exchange for her heart. This made Hyeon more furious, so she continued pounding Ash as the bomb counted down. Meanwhile, Untae arrived at the orphanage, deciding to handle the situation without the code. As he got to the room, he saw there were only 10 seconds left. At the same time, Hyeon started to feel pain in her head, just like when she fought Sahan. She saw memories of her mother asking her to promise that she wouldn't let anyone catch her. Ash couldn't believe her eyes when Hyeon suddenly took on her actual appearance. Hyeon told her to put an end to all her evil deeds and pay for her sins. But Ash replied it wouldn't make Aeon come back from the dead or forgive her. Nevertheless, Hyeon reminded her that if she continued, she would be turning her back on all the times she chased her dreams with pure intentions. Ash wondered if there was ever a time she was that pure-hearted, didn't have a desire to hurt anyone, and lived her life as an innocent. She suddenly snapped her fingers to stop the bomb. But in the orphanage, the kids were already playing with Untae, and he told Hyeon they got played again. Ash never planned to kill Hyeon's siblings or blow up Untae's house. Ash was shocked that Hyeon transformed into her without touching her lips or ever seeing how she looked in person, and realized Hyeon's powers returned when she was forced into high-stakes situations, which was the same way she learned to use hypnosis on Sahan. She then crushed the bottle of the memory-erasing pills, and then told Hyeon things would get worse as she got closer to God. But Hyeon was determined to get revenge on those who killed Father Michael and made this world a living hell. Hyeon then got a sharp pain in her heart, and it was harder for her to calm down with each memory she recalled. She was sure that the people she saw in her memories were her parents, but the more she thought about it, the more she got afraid. This left her wondering what exactly happened 10 years ago. Days later, news channels broadcast that Aeong had been missing for 4 days. Untae also pointed out that the Angels of Death had been quiet since they fought with Ash. He told Hyeon there were 3 Angels of Death left, and one of them owned a pharmaceutical company. They would get an idea of Project 0101 if they looked into him. In the garage, Untae told her they would have to go to Gangwon province, where the pharmaceutical company was. He was shocked when he saw Hyeon dressed for combat, but it was actually Haeun who gave her the outfit. On their way out, Haeun came to see them off, wishing them to return safe and sound, and gave Hyeon a leather jacket. At the vampire hideout, Mammon complained about Ash disappearing. They soon got on their feet as God approached the table. Levy signaled the start of the meeting for executive members. God then told them that the rebellion would soon take place, and questioned why none of them could bring the pureblood's heart. Tension rose in the room, and Vael could tell it was because the Angels of Death had been killed off one by one. Mammon told the vampires to pipe down, but one of them raised their hands to ask God a question. God gave the vampire a chance to speak, and the guy asked for a chance to replace the fallen Angels of Death. He promised to bring God what he desired. But because the regular vampires had lower chances of winning against the pureblood, the man asked God for some of his blood. God agreed to his request, and asked if there was anyone else who wanted to be an Angel of Death. As he approached the vampire who made the request, the guy couldn't believe how intimidating he was. Some other vampires decided to partake in God's blood as well, and he told them that they didn't have to do anything. Suddenly, their bones cracked, and they felt excruciating pain. Eventually, they blew up, and God said they were not worthy because they couldn't hold out long enough. When he asked if anyone else wanted to be an Angel of Death, they all remained silent. After that, Mammon told him all the preparations were complete, and he would go after Hyeon this time. Vael asked if he was sure, and Mammon replied he was willing to risk his life because if he succeeded, he would be guaranteed a handsome reward. Vael wondered why God was sending them to attack Hyeon one by one, thinking he had an ulterior motive. God then decided to sacrifice someone that Hyeon cherished, so that her heart could reach its full potential. Untae and Hyeon were waiting at a bus stop due to the heavy rain. He asked her what her plan was after they saved the world, but Hyeon hadn't thought about it at all. She never had the time to think about things like that, ever since she started hunting the Angels of Death. She also didn't think she had the right to dream about a happy future. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream, but it turned out to be an old couple riding together on a bicycle. Hyeon admired the couple, wishing everyone could be like that at their age. She was looking forward to things going back to normal, so she could show her siblings the world they hadn't had a chance to see. Untae then told her he also wanted to show her the world as it should be, but he quickly tried to recover from the awkward moment. Hyeon started blushing, and doubting that the detective would actually think about her in that way. As the rain stopped, Untae asked her why she was looking for someone named Johan Seo, and she said the person looked like someone from her childhood memories. She thought she'd recover more memories if she met the guy when they got to the village he was supposed to be in. they met an old lady that accused Hyeon of trying to steal her husband. And just when Hyeon lost hope, Johan showed up. Hyeon realized that Johan had been living in this tiny village. She didn't know if he was actually still alive, because she had no memories of him after they drifted apart. And also wasn't expecting to run into him, but hoped if he recognized her, that she'd be able to recover her memories from 10 years ago. However, when she asked, Johan said he didn't know who she was. Soon after, she and Untae decided to leave before sunset, but Hyeon was having trouble with her bike, so Untae decided to go look for replacement parts. Hyeon saw Johan rushing to get dinner ready for some old ladies. Seeing how kind he was towards them, she wondered why he acted cold towards her. Back then, she tried to remind him of how they used to play and read a lot of books together. But that didn't ring a bell to Johan at all. She could tell he was just pretending not to recognize her, but still had no clue why. She walked up to him again, asking why he was avoiding her, and he just answered that she was an outsider and left. On the other hand, Hyeon said that was the nicest thing anyone had said to her since she got here. She assumed Johan was pretending not to know her because of the time she scared him. She didn't expect a lot, but hoped she would learn something if she came to the village. However, it seemed like it was time for her to pack it and focus on the next angel of death. She felt the village looked similar, and thought she had seen it in a book. On her way out of the train station, she spotted a train speeding towards her. Meanwhile, Untae asked his colleague to gather some information on Johan, and they discovered he was a survivor of an incident at Bangsan Market. Back in the village, it turns out that Johan had saved Hyeon from a falling picture frame. She tried to help him clean the wound, but he rejected her help. She then asked him why he was acting like he didn't know her, and he apologized for being rude and for what he did all those years ago. After chatting for a bit, Johan decided to take her to the market. A huge fire broke out in the market 10 years ago, and the government covered it up by saying it was started by gangs. However, Hyeon knew this was where the first vampire attack took place. She wondered if this really was the place, considering the market was full of activity. The people in the area had put in a lot of effort to make the market survive, despite the tragedy. Johan then told her that she used to live here, and guided her to where her former house was located. Making their way, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her, similar to when she had fought with Ash. As she struggled with the pain, Johan told her that he was there on the day of the attack. By the time he had come out of the store, the entire area had become a bloodbath. People screamed as vampires brutally attacked them for their blood. In the midst of the chaos, a man with burns all over his body killed Hyeon's parents. This same man fed his blood to everyone who came across him. He was God. Johan blamed himself for running away and not helping the people there, and Hyeon vowed to make God pay no matter what. Then, in the blink of an eye, she fell unconscious. Untae returned to the village, but wondered where Hyeon had gone. He then saw Johan running towards him while carrying Hyeon's body. While thinking about how to confront the situation, he felt that he and Hyeon were just part of the same team, and nothing more. Before he could react, an old lady dashed out and started hitting Hyeon, accusing her of trying to steal her husband. Untae then used this chance to ask what happened, and when Johan told him, he said Hyeon wasn't the type to faint unexpectedly. Hyeon finally woke up, and wondered why the two guys were looking intense. Later on, she was welcomed into the old lady's home. She found it weird that she couldn't remember the man with burns all over his body, and couldn't picture him at all, no matter how hard she tried. But she needed to find him quickly. At the same time, God was informed that she went to Bangsan Market, and told his vampires to get ready, because they would be able to emerge from the shadows once Project 0101's sacrificial lamb was ready. As the doors opened, God and his vampire army stepped out to make Hyeon reach her final form. Later, Johan called Hyeon out for a moment, and she wondered if there was something he hadn't told her. She stepped out and saw a lot of old people in the living room who were excited to have guests in their small village. Hyeon told one of the old ladies that she was friends with Johan and used to live in Bangsan Market. However, when she asked the old lady if she could remember her, the old lady didn't. After that, the woman offered her some food, saying she only cooked small portions. But this could only be small for a sumo wrestler. Even her grandson was tired of all the food. Hyeon was anxious, because she couldn't eat regular food, of course. But Johan saved her by distracting the woman. Afterwards, they both went outside to talk. The air was awkward around them, and random conversations didn't help. Johan then begged her not to fight God, because he couldn't forget the brutal things he did to her parents. He even offered to die for her, so he could make up for running away back then. Hyeon told him that he had already been a huge help to her, and that he shouldn't say things like that so lightly. Suddenly, the wooden rails broke, and Hyeon fell off the bridge. She planned to land on a rock, since there was enough distance for her to land properly, but was surprised to see Johan jump to save her, and they both ended up in the water. He was bleeding a lot, but said it was a small price to pay for her safety. She reminded him that she was a vampire and her wounds could heal easily, unlike him. On their way back, Johan asked about her relationship with Unte, and she explained they were just teammates. But her mind wandered a bit. In a flash, he felt chills run down his body as he saw a terrifying expression on Hyan. She told him to run towards the senior citizen center like his life depended on it, because God was standing right behind him. God told her that he had been waiting 10 years for this day to come. Hyan ushered Johan to get out of here, because she wouldn't be able to use her full strength until he got to safety. She then got to facing God and his army, but his presence was overwhelming. She felt like he could wipe out the entire village by exerting his overwhelming pressure. Her heart pounded heavily, wondering if he was someone from her childhood memories. But it didn't matter, because she was ready to kill him. In an instant, 2 vampires lunged at her, but she smashed them into the ground. She thought about how she wanted to kill God immediately, but she needed to ask God why he killed Father Michael and her parents, and why he turned this world into a waking nightmare. She also asked about Project 0101, but he just answered she would get to know about it soon enough. God then provoked her by asking if her heart would be tastier than that of her parents. Hyan then furiously punched through all the vampires, causing a huge explosion that blew them away. But the vampires just kept piling up. She then tried using the hypnosis skill, but it didn't work because God was also pure-blooded. One of the vampires then pulled out a gun, and she blocked the bullets with her hand, but now realized the bullets had acid, causing her arm to melt from the inside. While thinking of how to buy time, the remaining vampires surrounded her, all of them wielding guns. They fired at once, but Johan suddenly jumped in to save her. His back was now filled with holes, but he was alright as long as she was safe. He told her that he wanted to spare her some of the pain, because even though she was a vampire, she could still feel it. After breathing his last breath, Hyan let out a rageful scream. God told her this was all a test to make her complete. She then quickly attacked him, slamming him all around the area, and after landing so many blows, she took off God's mask to see what his face looked like, but the face she saw shocked her. God kicked her away while she was flabbergasted. Lunte would then approach her, saying he wanted to tell her something he found out, but before he could say anything, Hyan told him that the person she unmasked wasn't God, because the guy was trembling in fear. The imposter said he had done everything he was asked to do, where shortly after, his body exploded. Unte then told her that the entire village was fake, including all the people and animals they had seen. He said they all moved to the village from somewhere else, and no one had actually lived there for more than 3 years. Some cars then pulled up to the village, and Levi stepped out. At the same time, Unte and Hyan realized that Johan was God all along. He was the one who had set up everything to bring her to the village. And in the car, Levi congratulated Johan on a job well done. She asked him how he wanted to proceed, but Johan remained silent. Hyan couldn't understand why Johan would do that to her. Suddenly, the pain in her heart got worse, and she felt like it was about to explode. Her heart pounded heavily as memories flashed through her mind. She kept asking why Johan would do this, because she was convinced he was a good person. Unte tried to call her to her senses, but it didn't work. Her memories started returning, and she recalled it was Johan who set fire to her hometown and killed everyone, including her parents. She regretted making her parents go that way back then when she asked for a slushie, because after getting the drink, they were confronted by Johan and a group of gangsters who threatened them for their money. Hyan's dad tried to control the situation, but Johan would rush towards them with a knife. Back then, Hyan's father told her they had been living alongside ordinary people for a long time, and that they were meant to do something with their strength. But Hyan never understood what he meant by that. Her parents had put in a lot of effort for her to have a normal childhood. When her dad wanted to play with her, her mom came and warned them all about the security cameras and dash cams that would see them. Hyan's family wasn't well off, but they were really close, and every day was a happy one. Eventually, her family opened up a restaurant at Bangsan Market, and for many years, they had been moving to various places while hiding from humans, but decided to settle down at the market to raise her. It wasn't easy to set up the restaurant because they couldn't taste the food themselves, but they made sure to pay back the generosity they had received from the neighbors who helped. They lived in the area for 10 years and steadily won over the trust of the villagers. One day, Johan came into their shop, and as soon as Hyan saw him, she ran away. Her parents had told her not to get close to other people yet, but she had been meeting up with him secretly, and it made her really happy. However, her life began to fall apart from that day on. Hyeon's dad would give Johan some food to take home, and just before he could accept it, he saw something that made him run away. An old man then told them that Johan had been working several part-time jobs to help his mom, whom he lived with. And the reason he ran away was because of a thug who moved in with Johan's mom and had been leeching off of her. After a while, it started getting hard for Hyeon to get in touch with Johan because of the thugs who started bullying other street vendors and demanding outrageous amounts for a maintenance fee. An old lady begged the thug to reconsider the fee, and just as he was about to slap her, Hyeon's dad stopped him. When Hyeon saw her dad step in like that, it reminded her of something he told her when she was very little. He told her that the most powerful creatures on earth weren't lions, elephants, or humans, but pure-blood vampires. Her dad then offered the thug some money to let the matter slide. The thug then started slapping him around, but soon realized that his hands were the ones that hurt. Hyeon's dad then said the beating he took should be enough to cover the old lady's fee. Hyeon didn't understand her father because she thought their powers would be used to help other people. She thought her father was foolish and was ignoring people who were in need. Later on, she would save Johan from some bullies, threatening them by smashing a hole in the wall. But Johan became terrified of her. Maybe it was because she was too young to know any better. Nevertheless, she wanted to use her powers to help someone else. But she only ended up traumatizing him. After a while, the thugs continued to bully the villagers, and their violence only got worse over time because the people were powerless against them. Eventually, Johan would be forced to hold a knife against Hyeon's family. She didn't know why, but he was being harassed every day by the members of his new stepfather's gang. She hadn't seen Johan in a long time, but it was horrifying and sad to see him this way. Her head was filled with thoughts about what made Johan act this way, and why people with power abused it. She also wondered if it really wasn't possible to help him with her powers. But she couldn't stand doing nothing. Johan was too scared to use the knife, so his stepfather started smacking him, saying he deserved it. Hyeon's father would stop him and asked the thug to just let the villagers live in peace. However, the thug said he would only do that once Hyeon's father was dead. Suddenly, Hyeon's mom sent the guy flying into the air, saying she was prepared to accept the consequences. Her parents then went ahead to take down the rest of the thugs, and after that, the gang stopped terrorizing the market, but they immediately paid the price. Hyeon's family was forced to move again, and her dad reminded her having great strength meant carrying a great responsibility. Those words made her see her rash actions in a different light. She found out much too late that her power could be terrifying to others. Regardless, her parents waited a while before they heard loud bangs on the door, and opening it, they saw Hyeon, who had blood on her hands and was crying about Johan. Sadly, Hyeon's parents would find him in a pool of his own blood. Hyeon's dad could tell he wasn't going to make it, and even the village doctor couldn't save him. As her parents stepped away, Hyeon would grab them. She was angry, and she wanted them to save Johan because there was a way. But her parents wanted to turn a blind eye to someone who was dying in front of them, all for the sake of maintaining the balance of power. For this, she hated her parents. Tears filled her eyes. She begged them not to abandon him. He would struggle through his own pains all the time, telling her not to cry. Her parents then decided it would be nice for her to have an older brother, and her father would bite himself and drip his blood into Johan's mouth, restoring his fleeting life. The villagers would later hear the gangsters ended up in the hospital because another gang beat them up, having no idea Hyeon's father threatened them. Hyeon's dad told Johan that he couldn't let anyone else see his face, and that they were going to live in the mountains. He was no longer living a life for himself, and they promised to take good care of him. Tears welled up in Johan's eyes because he was so happy. They decided to stay in the village for a bit longer, while Hyeon's parents went to look for a new place to live. The happiness Hyeon felt with Johan getting a second chance at life didn't last long, because there was something he still had to resolve. Hyeon gave him a cup of grape slushies, but Johan declined it, and never said anything about what happened that day. He kept avoiding her, and she thought he was acting like this because of how she scared him. She didn't know any better, and thought things would be better if she helped him out. Besides, she never had a friend before. Johan would call her back as she ran away, but he hit his face on the tree, leaving a face print there. They laughed about it, and he told her that she was still his friend. Everything went smoothly, and Johan quickly became a member of her family. He enjoyed the noise during dinner, because he had never sat down with a family over a meal like this. Hyeon's mom then reminded him to take care of any business he had before they left. They could now look forward to the happy days, until one day, Hyeon and her parents saw the news about 3 middle school students who were found with stab wounds. They didn't have to say what they were thinking, because they already knew who the culprit was. Hyeon's dad was furious and decided to stop Johan immediately before he did anything worse. Hyan's father told Johan they wanted to trust humans. He had saved several who were on the verge of death, but after becoming mixed-blood vampires, they all became different people. He thought Johan would be different because he was the only one who didn't beg for his life. As he lay dying, Johan asked what was wrong with what he did, questioning why he couldn't do what he wanted. He then struck Hyan's father, telling him he didn't understand. As Hyan's mother rushed with her daughter in her arms to their new home, she thought back to her husband telling her he didn't want their daughter to be traumatized, and that things would be fine. He would take care of everything and join them. He'd never seen this level of bloodlust from a mixed blood before, and couldn't understand why Johan had changed so much. They say the amount of power a mixed blood gains was linked to their level of ambition. He just couldn't comprehend how deep Johan's desires were. Their father blew Johan away, showing his true form, telling Johan he didn't want to fight anymore. Johan then cried into his arms as the father began to strangle his neck. But now Hyan's father could tell he was being hit with hypnosis. His wife came running in because he'd been taking too long to come home, and she and Hyan were horrified to find him bloodied on the floor with his heart missing. Hyan cried for her father as tears dripped down his eyes. He only replied, "I'm sorry, my baby girl." The mother and daughter mourned for their fallen beloved. Hyan's mother then held Hyan close, apologizing for all the times she made her feel lonely, for not letting her go to school to make friends, for not buying her more grape slushies and ox blood, and for never buying her a storybook. But she needed Hyan to forget these bad memories, and told her to promise to turn around and run, and to never let him catch her. Hyan then began to do just that, under the spell of her mother's powers, as she wished she hadn't made her parents save Johan back then, but it all just faded away. Hyan's mother then grabbed onto Johan, exploding to repent for allowing him to have this power. However, he'd survive, seeing Hyan one last time before she fell unconscious. Where they were staying, Te was tending to Hyan's unconscious body, but Vael was ready to take them on next. In her dreams, Johan kept calling to her, saying he needed her. She then woke up to Te. They stepped outside, and after she explained her entire past to him, she feigned happiness, but quickly broke down, feeling so racked with guilt. She felt her parents' deaths were entirely her fault. Te then held her close, telling her she could share some of the burden with him, and not just because they were working together. She then muttered, "You're a good person." And when he turned back to confirm what she said, she went, nothing." Back at the inn, the owner expressed his concern, and Hyan learned from him she'd been unconscious for 2 weeks now, and that Te had been taking care of her the entire time. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep, having nursed her back to health day and night. Now Hyan was red, just thinking about his efforts. The two eventually rode off on their bikes and stopped before Vael, knowing immediately that he was an angel of death. And now Hyan was ready to kill. Her heart was beating so loudly, Te could hear it. He snapped her out of her vicious state, deciding to step in first. Vael clapped, taunting this to be a heartbreaking sight, since a mere detective was trying to protect a pure-blood vampire. However, he had no business with Te, claiming he loved gourmet cuisines. Hyan's blood. Te attacked immediately because of how Vael licked his lips at her. They were about to go at it, until Vael suddenly kneeled, explaining he was here to pledge allegiance to the real pureblood, and was offering to tell them where Johan was, but only in exchange for some of Hyan's blood. However, she'd respond by attempting to kill him, and her anger was so fierce, her heart was glowing. Te called for her to stop, because now that she was fully awakened, at this rate, the rate she'd have struck Vael would have blown up the whole tunnel. Vael decided to tip them off first, as a gesture of good faith. He told them something catastrophic was going to happen in 3 months, and that they needed to go to Jeju Island if they wanted to stop it. He then warned Hyan not to go after Johan, only telling her if she followed this advice, she'd thank him in the future. Breaking news. The long-awaited vampire vaccine has been given the green light, according to the Supol pharmaceutical company. This oral tablet has supposedly gone through 8 years of clinical trials, and would prevent a person from becoming a vampire when taken consistently for 3 months. The president pledged that the government would provide support to public health orgs, hospitals, pharmacies, and other distributors across the nation, so that everyone could gain access as soon as possible. The news reporter expressed her hopes that this vampire crisis plaguing their world would soon be over. Elsewhere, the test subjects of the new vaccine expressed feeling stronger than before. Johan coldly entered and the scientists explained these were the subjects who'd taken the vaccine every day for 3 months. Johan then activated his awakened form and snapped his fingers, causing the subjects to be permanently hypnotized. And with a single command, the subjects became feral vampires, tearing each other apart until nothing was left but blood and body parts. Learning from Vael that Hyan had truly awakened, Johan broke out in hysterical laughter, murmuring to himself that he'd soon eat her heart. Hyan was horrified to hear her siblings and Unte's sister had been all taking the vaccine. The situation was getting precarious. The citizens were fighting to all get a bottle, and Hyan was furious at what Johan was doing to these innocent people. Making their way, Unte broke down his intel on Mammon, who ran the Supple Pharmaceutical Company. This guy was sick, amassing tons of crimes involving SA and kidnapping women. But he didn't go after just any women. He only sought women in relationships. And recently, there's been a big increase in cases where couples went missing. The two found the factory, but it looked completely abandoned. They then decided to get some info from 2 people in a van nearby, and Unte quickly picked out that they were vampires. Hyan ripped the car door open and took care of the 2 quickly. Then, finding out what was in the back, Hyan and Unte were horrified. They found a truck full of couples completely gagged and tied up. After freeing them, Unte learned these couples all had something in common. On Instagram, they all used the hashtags related to the Supple Company's carrot vaccine. They'd likely had their locations traced, leading to their kidnapping. Hyan then got to interrogating one of the drivers from earlier, and learned the factory was actually in the basement of Dae Gualiang Tunnel. 3 months worth of vaccines were being distributed in 3 rounds, with the second round being shipped out starting tomorrow. The only way they could stop shipment was with a code that only Mammon knew, and Unte had the perfect plan to infiltrate. Meanwhile, Mammon was getting massaged by his ladies, preparing to take some of the vaccine himself, since it amplified vampire abilities tenfold. He was so ecstatic to know there was only 1 day left until Phase 2 of Project 0101 was complete. He then called for his ladies to bring the couples in, because it was time for him to have a little taste. And amongst the disoriented couples, Unte and Hyan were in disguise. Turning back to when Unte had suggested this, Hyan was taken aback. He was going to have them post on social media and get kidnapped by acting like a couple. She didn't think she could do this, making him wonder if she's never dated anyone before, which was totally correct, by the way. Following the plan, Hyan jumped onto Unte screaming, "Babe!" saying she was going to kill herself if someone hurt him. Mammon wanted to get the scoop on this annoying couple, and reading their all-caps post about them staying in an Airbnb for a month, detailing how the girlfriend wouldn't be scared as long as she was with her boo, he now called everyone out of the room, except for them. He wanted to shatter their hopes, revealing the vaccine they thought they were taking to save them was made of vampire blood, and that every pill they gradually took transformed them into a vampire without them realizing. Mammon was so pleased with himself, thinking the couple must be shocked. He wanted to see the look of despair on their faces once it sank in. He then played his favorite game, holding up 2 bottles. One had a white pill, and the other had a green pill. If they picked white, they could leave. But if they picked green, he was going to drink Hyan's blood right in front of Unte. In his past, Mammon was an infamous perverted loser who gotten rejected by women all the time who had boyfriends. He stabbed his desk constantly, not understanding what was wrong. He believed when people saw something nice, they took it. He wanted to take all the women in the world and make them his. Let me stop for a sec to say this guy is sick. He was elated, seeing the look of despair on Unte's face, but wasn't prepared to receive a fierce blow from Hyan. Hours later, Unte slapped him awake, telling Mr. Pervert he'd never seen an angel of death pass out like this before, and Mammon was stunned to see Hyan was the true blood. The two tried to pry the Project 0101 stop code from him, but he responded by grabbing a handful of the pills, and swallowing them, he transformed into a giant monster. However, this only meant he was just a bigger target for Hyan, as she delivered a barrage and sent him flying. She tried to hypnotize him into giving her the code, but it didn't work. He had God's protection. They then heard over the PA that it was all for naught, as Johan spoke to them, mocking Hyan. He revealed her powers weren't working, because when he was near her, he could control them. He kept digging in, saying her heart glowed beautifully. He'd seen the same thing before from her mother. Now Hyan was furiously searching for him, and he was prepared to deal with her. She made it to where he was speaking to her from, and his goons told her to show him some respect. But he would just smack them aside, telling them how dare they speak to her like that. The two stood face to face, and she wanted to hear why he did all this before she killed him. She thought he was a good person then. He used to believe that things could change if he tried hard enough, thinking things would be better if he was a good kid, but came to understand that if you had nothing, you got treated like dirt. People murdered their own families for money and ended up getting betrayed by those they trusted most. He believed everyone was like that deep down, hiding their true nature because they were scared of breaking social norms. But digging just a little deeper, he believed all humans were nothing but vile scum. Then as he was about to give up on life, he came across Hyun's parents. They seemed like the perfect creatures to him, but they weren't as perfect as he thought. Seeing the look in their eyes when they were stabbed in the back by someone they trusted, he realized they were no different than humans, just as weak and pathetic on the inside. He failed to get her mother's heart, so only half of him was pure, but he still had one last chance by obtaining hers. Thinking about all those she lost for his insane desires, she came flying at Johan, but he stopped her like it was nothing, saying he couldn't be any happier with how things have turned out. After she pulled back, he wouldn't be ready for what was coming next. Riding out after his escape, bloodied and injured, he admitted he was too impatient, trying to get her heart as soon as possible. He'd gotten injured because he hesitated. He recalled the time her father told him about the history of his ancestors. A vampire man who broke the rules, living amongst the humans, had started a family, until one day, war broke out, and the woman he loved died on the battlefield. The man blacked out, and when he came to, everyone around him was dead, including his own children. It was an unconscious power that caused true bloods to enter a state where they lost control of themselves. That's why he believed they couldn't live with the humans. And that's exactly what Johan had lost to earlier. Back at the lab, Ute grabbed Hyun's shoulder and was blown back, faced with Hyun's true form as she lunged at him with no hesitation. He just barely managed to dodge her attack, but getting tossed around, he had to figure a way to calm her down. She was just too strong. He noticed she suddenly stopped when she spotted her crown, and so he grabbed it, and placing it on her head as she went for another attack, it brought her back to her senses. She asked what she was doing here, and what had happened, while all Ute was thinking, "Oh my god, that took years off my life." He shortly played it off, saying he was able to dodge her with his sharp reflexes and quick thinking. So, it was all good. Unfortunate for them though, the vampire pills got distributed, but he had what they needed to stop them in a USB drive. The two later went to an abandoned cathedral, a place they could rest at for a while. It reminded Hyun of Father Michael. The two lit up some candles so they could see better, and somehow, it ended up as a heart. So they started kicking them down to make things a little less awkward. "Come on, kiss already. We want to see it." The two then stared up at the beauty of the stars. Hyun wanted to show her siblings sights like these when things went back to normal, and Ute always wanted to have a beer under the stars until daybreak. When he heard Hyun tell him she's always wanted to do the same with some friends, he thought of her smile back then. She suddenly told him they should do that once this was all over, but he went silent, then told her he was going out for a smoke and would be right back. He wanted to have a beer while looking up at the stars with her for a long time, but coughing up blood, he knew he didn't have much longer. Johan's car was stopped by a vampire screaming for his help. The man didn't have long to live and wanted just one drop of Johan's blood. So, Johan stepped out, slit his arm, and gave some blessings from God. Meanwhile, Ute was uncontrollably losing it all. But when Hyun found him, he played it off, then pointed out how her fist was injured from earlier, and told her that her technique was bad, showing her how to make a proper fist. She tried to play it off, saying that was unnecessary, but he suddenly grabbed her hand, telling her she needed to learn so she didn't get hurt. And she got a little red over his concern. He gave her proper coaching, and at some point, she gave him a bloody nose. Later on, Hyun thought warmly of their training, and wondered if she and the detective had grown a little closer. She suddenly smelt the stench of blood, and found it fresh, hidden under some leaves. She now remembered that time she caught him mumbling to himself that he only had 6 months to live, and knew she had to do something to save him. When she came rushing to him, he knew he'd been caught. Nothing really could get by her sense of smell, but he got anxious, seeing her reveal her shoulder, telling him to drink her blood. She nipped near her neck, and got in close, ushering him to hurry up and drink. Johan poured his blood into the dying man's mouth, knowing that vampires who drank it near their death ultimately die. Untae held Hyeon close, hearts beating as he bared his fangs, promising to live. But he stopped, telling her there was a study that all mixed-blood vampires died within 5 years. He didn't want to drink it, saying he didn't believe it was going to work anyways. Hyeon looked so down, but he tried to assure her they didn't know he was going to die for sure yet, and told her not to dwell on it. Where Johan was indulging in a pool of blood, he thought of Hyeon and Untae potentially being a couple, and began to laugh hysterically. He couldn't believe, despite her losing her family and the entire world burning because of vampires, that she had time for romance. He asked Vael his opinion, and Vael heard that more people get into relationships during wartime. Johan thought humans were despicable for falling in love, while bullets rained down around them. But it's clear there's a bit of jealousy here. He then gave Vael his mission to go to Hyeon and remind her of the war she was fighting. Then, as a reward, he'd give Vael some blood. He knew why Vael was desperate for it. Despite already being an angel of death, he didn't want Vael to kill Hyeon, but to do something far more effective. While our protagonists were on their way to meet with the president, they suddenly got attacked by some vicious crows. Then, Vael appeared, aiming to kill Untae. Their bikes got wrecked, but the two were unscathed, and Vael cracked his knuckles, telling Untae directly that his life was in danger. The two then started going blow for blow. Vael could now tell Untae didn't just get lucky during their last encounter. The detective was stronger than most of the Angels of Death. Vael then pulled out 2 handfuls of cards, offering to show him a card trick as they lit ablaze. He then tossed them at Untae, who swiftly dodged them, but Untae was shocked, realizing they were explosive. Untae made it out fine, but if he hadn't moved in time, the blast would have for sure sent him to the grave. Vael then tossed more, and pounded Untae directly into the ground. With a hand gripped at his neck, Untae asked why Vael wasn't finishing him off. Through the smoke, Hyeon couldn't see what was happening, but Vael revealed his trump card, full of flaming deck, sending an explosion point blank. When the smoke finally cleared, Hyeon's heart dropped, seeing Vael standing before Untae's clothing that was empty of any body. She screamed in fury and went to attack, but Vael escaped using his cards, leaving her angry and by herself. In a theater, Vael later wiped himself down, asking why Untae couldn't find a better outfit. As Hyeon snickered and snorted, the two bantered, ready to go for another round. But Hyeon told him to calm down. Flashing back to earlier, Vael whispered to Untae that there were people at his 10 o'clock and 6 o'clock. There were dozens of lackeys here to make sure Vael killed him. They had guns loaded with acid that would melt his entire body, and even Vael wouldn't survive if he got shot. That's where he revealed Johan's request to kill him, and that he needed Untae to cooperate as he pretended to attack. Hyeon had overheard them with her powerful hearing and played her part. Once again, Vael was here to help them, but he wanted Hyeon's blood in return. He led them towards the back of the theater for the reason that was behind some curtains. He showed them his big lion, which was easily over 10 feet long, but Vael corrected them, explaining he was 11.5 feet, weighed 882 pounds, and was powerful enough to send a dump truck flying with one swipe of his paws. But his deadliest weapon was his cuteness. Daniel was Vael's beloved pet lion, along with his birds. Untae got close to Daniel, asking Vael what the lion was saying, and Vael replied, "He says you're ugly, your piercings suck, and you have a below average body, and he wants to hit you for being annoying." Logically, Untae felt that was just what Vael was thinking. When Daniel began to cough up blood, it was clear now that Vael had given all his pets some of his. They didn't have much time left. He knew that when a mixed blood vampire on the brink of death drank pure blood, they died because their bodies couldn't tolerate it, but explained there might be a way for them to survive. He observed a few rare cases who lived longer after drinking pure blood on the brink of death. Suspecting pure blood killed them when colliding with mixed blood, he hypothesized a mixed blood needed to drink the moment their mixed blood completely faded from their body as they were dying. But, taking it a step further, he wanted to try a blood transfusion with Hyeon, who was 100% pure-blooded. However, Untae rejected Vael for her, mostly because he couldn't trust him. The two later walked around the building, finding a poster of Vael, known as a master magician who performed a show known as The Devil's Game. Despite Untae trying to keep Hyeon safe, she felt bad for Vael and his pets, and started thinking about the transfusion as a way to save Untae as well. On Untae's phone, the two then watched a woman who was completely skeptical about the vaccine. There were reports about 67 people who'd been reported missing this month, all sharing one thing in common. These people expressed strong doubts in the safety of the vampire vaccine. Unfortunately, Her and her entourage would later be met by Vael, looking to end her life. He pierced her body quickly, leaving her dead on the ground, as he told her she should have thought twice before shooting off her mouth. Tae and Hyan found him afterwards. They'd been tailing him the entire time, and knew something was up, because he was, of course, one of Johan's right-hand men. He lit up, preparing for combat, but Hyan zipped right past him, trying to figure out what he'd been hiding. She never expected to find the woman on the news, safe and sound, along with all the people that had been reported missing. Vael had been keeping them safe the whole time, and chose not to tell the two because he didn't want them to make a big deal of it. Earlier, Vael told the woman he pretended to kill to act like she was dead for 10 minutes. He stabbed his own arm with his nails, revealing that vampires nearby were watching them, and if she wanted to make it out of this, she needed to cooperate. The two would later return to the theater to play with Vael's animals. Hyan initially thought he was just a cold man who used people like tools, but now she could see he wasn't so bad. Later in the room, Vael heard a knock on the door, and his heart dropped seeing Johan. He tried playing it cool, but was far too anxious. In the past, he'd always gone to Johan to report the results of his mission, but seeing Johan had come here, it was clear he wasn't trusted. Johan suddenly grabbed Vael's arm, suspecting the blood on him wasn't a human's, but instead a vampire's. Vael tried to say that didn't make any sense, so Johan whipped out his tongue, agreeing with Vael, but saying he'd know for sure if he just tasted it. Johan smiled, confirming it was indeed human blood. Luckily, prior to this, Unte offered to cover Vael in human blood, thinking Johan would likely be suspicious of Vael, since they were too. Unte had gotten it from the people Vael saved, who were more than willing to help. But things weren't completely safe. Johan snapped, asking Vael about the 68 people he was hiding, and grabbed Vael's shoulder, offering to overlook what he did, also willing to grant him freedom, as long as Vael heeded his next request. Later, Vael presented Unte and Hyan a banquet made of congealed ox blood. It was a happy time, especially with Daniel's mouth full of mice. Vael then decided to show them some magic tricks, and they had a fun time. Afterwards, he thought about all the good times he had with his beloved lion. They'd been through so much together. The other two came back from shopping, and rushed over, finding the theater on fire. They went to Vael's room, finding blood splattered all over the floor. He, meanwhile, had escaped with his pets elsewhere. Johan had commanded him to kill all the people he saved on live broadcasts as a final show, but he just couldn't do it. Levi walked into Johan's bloodbath, expressing her concern to Johan that Vael might probably betray him again. She knew Vael was much smarter than the rest of the Angels of Death, but still, Johan felt no concern, because he was going to make Vael die in the most painful way tonight. Vael left his animals in care of Unte and Hyan, saying he'd come back no matter what tonight. He just needed Hyan to keep her promise of giving him her blood, and she agreed. She'd save Daniel as a way to hopefully be able to save Unte. That night, the venue was packed, with people all eager to see Vael's return to magic shows. He was going to be putting on a never-before-seen trick, and fangirls excitedly got his autograph in the dressing room. However, his heart was racing. The 100 people Johan personally invited to the show were those who stood in the way of distributing the vaccine. For the grand finale, Johan had ordered him to kill them all and take the fall for it. But he was of course determined to save these people and rescue his beloved pets. Making his entrance, he could see that all the staff members were working for Johan. However, he wasn't expecting Johan to be sitting directly in the crowd close to him. In Vael's earpiece, Johan was telling him to follow the plan, or else he was going to track down Daniel and tear him to pieces. So, Vael decided to turn the tables, inviting Johan on the stage for his big trick. Surprisingly, the live news had to point out how good-looking Johan was. But when he got on stage, Vael shot him with a flaming card. It was a trick he developed to reveal a person's true nature when the flames died down. And now people were in shock, questioning if Johan was a white-haired vampire. Vael then shot a staff member and shouted out that this wasn't a magic trick, and now everyone was horrified, seeing there really were vampires here. Vael went further, explaining that the vampire beside him was called God, the leader of all the vampires, and the staff here were all his underlings. But Vael wasn't ready for how Johan would respond. He casually admitted that Vael was right, and then told everyone he was going to turn them all into vampires. With the snap of his fingers, the audience trying to escape was hit with hypnosis, and the cameras exploded. Johan thought he had the upper hand, but his smirk disappeared Seeing Vael was laughing because he'd been trying to figure out how to make sure nobody died here, Johan then sent his underlings to attack. But Vael took care of them quickly, then just as quickly got blown back by Johan. However, Vael would respond with his strongest flaming wall of cards, delivering a devastating explosion at the highest level. But then, Johan would grab Vael by the neck, reminding him where his powers came from. The amount of punches Vael would receive broke nearly all of his bones. He knew it wasn't going to end well for him, and decided he'd leave Daniel to Hyan. Just as the two vampires were about to clash, Daniel suddenly bit into Johan's arm with his teeth. Johan could sense something wasn't right. Daniel's jaws were much stronger than a regular lion, and now seeing the blue glow in his eyes, it was evident he'd been given pure blood. Tossing Daniel off his arm, Johan was surprised, having tried thousands of times to make a vampire like this lion, and never succeeding. He was going to kill Daniel, but Vael intervened, telling his pet to scram because he didn't want him getting hurt. Vael then prepared more intense flames. He was going to get even more serious now, but wasn't expecting Johan to respond with flames of his own. Vael tried to attack, but it was no use. Johan was just too fast. And when all was said and done, Johan asked him if he had any last words. Vael would tell Daniel to run, but instead, the lion would come to pounce on Johan, where before Johan could respond, Hyan would hit him in the chest, asking if he had any last words. And then she punched him again so hard, he went flying across the theater. Getting up, Johan was thinking about how impressed he was by her. He wondered how she saved the lion. He could see she was more powerful than he could ever imagine, which was why he wanted her more than ever. He lit up burning blades, but to this, she put on her crown, showing off the true power of her pure blood. And now she was ready to really turn up the heat. The two ran at each other, really reminiscent of some Naruto, Sasuke, Rasengan Chidori clash. And by the time Unte arrived at the scene, he had to duck and cover from the immense explosion. He came to warn Hyan that they needed to leave because a lot of cops were outside, but could now see she wasn't going to stop until Johan was dead. How Hyan was right now really reminded Johan about the story her father told him about the vampire ancestor, who went feral. He wanted to see her become like that, so he struck directly into the building as a way to expose them all to everyone outside, where the police were waiting, aiming their guns loaded with acid. But this would not stop her relentless advance, as she came flying at Johan, who was trying to make an escape. Lying bleeding on the ground, he managed to utter, "You're just as fast as I expected." Hyan couldn't believe this. She thought he'd at least have the decency to show a little remorse. This boy had once meant the world to her, with how much she trusted him when they were kids. That's why she hoped her trust wasn't for nothing. But now she knew he didn't feel a shred of guilt. Johan replied she was just as pure and naive now as she was as a child. He thought she'd become rotten on the inside, just like the humans, since she grew amongst them. Smiling devilishly, he told her to make sure she didn't feel anything else for him but pure hatred. From his fingertips, he fired off a shot that blew up a mountain behind her. That way, he could fall off of the cliff and escape. Back where Vael was, he attempted to deal with the police. He was going to make an escape, but realized he was completely out of cards. That's when Daniel came out, and the police were fearful over the humongous lion with the eyes of a vampire. Vael noticed Daniel had come out with his favorite doll, and thought about the past. Vael knew what was trying to do, but begged him to stop. Daniel roared, trying to make himself look like the target, thinking Vael was in danger. And with Daniel leaping, Vael screamed for them not to shoot. In his past, Vael would always get beaten by his fellow magicians, who berated him for being an orphan and always blamed him when something went wrong with their performances. He thought he'd be better off dead, and that not even God was on his side. Then one day, Daniel came out to defend him, and that was the beginning of their friendship. Resting together in Daniel's cage, he'd see the lion covet a lion doll. Daniel offered it to Vael as a form of comfort, but he would just toss it back. The days would go on, and from that point on, whenever Vael was in trouble, Daniel would defend him. And one night, when Daniel offered his doll, Vael finally accepted. That's when Vael decided the two would become family. This was the first time he'd ever experienced family in his life. When the vampire crisis started, the magician team struggled financially, and his crew members made the drastic decision to all become vampires, forcing Vael to become one as well. All the rage that had been building up inside him his whole life was unleashed, and when he came to, his hands were covered in blood, and all the other members of his group were dead. Then, having lost consciousness again, he woke up to Daniel, who brought him to the outskirts of the city. When the police fired, Vael jumped in front of his lion as a way to thank him for all their times together. Then, cards would come at his feet, courtesy of Hyan, and he'd set off an explosion to make his escape. Back in his theater, Vael thanked Hyan for giving her blood, even though Daniel was still going to die. Before they left, Vael and Untae had one last one-off, where they bantered a bit, and Vael expressed feeling he and Hyan had a lot in common, having grown up alone with no one else to rely on. He told Untae to continue living, even if it was just for their sake. And as Untae took off, Vael couldn't let him leave without saying he was definitely better looking than him. Then, alone, Vael hugged his beloved friend on his last breaths. At a shipyard, where rain was pouring, Untae was covering Hyan, trying his best to get her from getting drenched. They were trying to head to Jeju Island, where the final shipment of the vampire pills were being manufactured, with no signs of stopping since Johan had his pocket in the media and the government. People were going to take the pills and become vampires on January 1st. Vael had tipped them off about the last angel of death who would stand in their way named Gore, a man completely on a different level than all the other ones, known as a flesh-eating demon. He was an infamous gangster in the past, and nothing short of disgusting, having eaten people alive. With the men on the docks hearing a sound, Untae had to hide him and Hyan in another corner, keeping her mouth covered. They still needed to get to the other side, where the only boat was that would take them to the island, but they also had to make sure no one would spot them. Hyan admitted she didn't mind being so close to Untae, and noticed he seemed quite relaxed. She perhaps thought he had a lot of experience in this, but not really. He admitted actually never having a girlfriend before, and only told her that he had one earlier because he didn't want her to think he had no experience. With him laughing it off, she now wanted to know if there was someone he liked. So, he pulled in close, face to face, but stopped answering to point out that the people who were guarding the area were gone. Heading out, he brought up how the path they were about to take was swarming with Gore's henchmen, likely 100 of them. If they did anything to make Gore suspicious, he'd probably blow up the ship immediately, and suggested they take a less direct route. But that was too slow for Hyan, so she knocked out all of the men so they could get there quickly. Gore, meanwhile, was quite nervous. He just needed them to take the bait and get on the boat. That way, he could blow up the ship. Getting an alert on his phone, he knew it was time, and began to laugh, not expecting Hyan to come bursting out of his ceiling. Untae was surprised. It only took her 30 seconds to get them here. She cleared the distance to his location in a single jump. Gore then raised his hands to activate his power. His ability was a brutal one that could blow people up from the inside, starting with their internal organs. But he'd soon be flabbergasted finding nothing happened. Hyan blocked it without even having to lift a finger. Gore just laughed, reflecting on his tough life, having gritted his teeth to endure being a gangster at the top, even devouring human flesh to survive. He's always done whatever it took, in this world where the strong preyed on the weak, which was why he was now groveling at Hyan's feet, promising his loyalty to her, saying all he did was carry out Johan's orders and that he didn't want to do this, telling her he'd be her loyal dog if that's what she wanted. However, seeing how quickly he was willing to change sides, she told him she wouldn't accept his help, even if he gave her an army 1,000,000 times stronger, before she stomped him out and killed him. On the ship to Jeju Island, Untae reminisced on the first time they met, where Hyan told him that time they had lunch wasn't it. But since her face was hidden the very first time, she decided to keep their first meeting a secret. Untae then brought up how this was the first time he'd seen Hyan so relaxed. He understood why she was so tense all this time, having grown up troubled and lonely. She thought about never having been able to be herself in front of other people, having constantly been afraid that she'd be discovered and was always on edge. Because she was a vampire, she never thought she'd meet someone who completely understood her. But she didn't think that way anymore, because she met him and felt he understood her. She realized her feelings for Untae kept getting stronger, and even though she just said those things like it wasn't a big deal, she couldn't look him in the eye. She felt she needed to hide her feelings for him, but as he pulled his face in closer and closer, while uttering her name, lips so close to hers, she felt she couldn't hide it anymore. Except he'd suddenly cover her head with a towel, laughing it off, thinking she must have been soaked because of the rain. With the tension eased, she wanted him to just give her some time. She'd find a way to save his life. Soon, the sky opened to a beautiful sight of stars, one that couldn't be seen in the city. Hyan fell asleep on Untae's shoulder, and he stared at her, thinking of how she's changed him. Prior to meeting her, He was a cold man who was disgusted by the vampires because of what they did to his family. His only desire was to annihilate all of them. He lived single-minded with that goal, forgetting what made him happy in the past. Then one day, he saw Hyan weeping before someone who'd been killed by another vampire. Up until that point, he believed vampires were the source of all evil, but now seeing one crying, he now saw he was mistaken. The more he learned about her, the more certain he became that she, a vampire, was more human than other people. He then thought back to her asking him if he had someone he liked. He did like someone, but he couldn't tell her how he felt, thinking that it'd be selfish since he didn't have long to live. As she fell deeper into sleep on his shoulder, he admitted he really liked her and apologized for not having the courage to tell her this when she was awake. Then leaned in closer again with his lips. Just kidding. He decided to pick her up, badgered by his thoughts of the police mascot, telling him indecent assault on a sleeping victim was punishable up to 10 years in prison or a large fine according to Article 298 of the Criminal Code, putting her down and covering her with his jacket. Turns out, she was awake the whole time, but just couldn't bring herself to open her eyes earlier. She thought if anything, she didn't deserve to hear those words from him until she's finished dealing with all of this. The next day, the two watched the news on Untae's phone, seeing people were excited to take the vaccine and would no longer have to worry about becoming vampires anymore. The day was December 29th. They knew that with this upcoming shipment, Johan would turn the remaining into vampires on January 1st at the stroke of midnight. They just needed to find him on the island and stop him. Riding around on a bike, the island town was much like a ghost town. Untae detailed the last obstacle in their way before Johan, his secretary, Levi, whom he didn't have much intel on, but she was supposedly his lover. The two villains would watch the news where they were staying. Johan told her he was so happy he could die, and she could see the empty look in his eyes. She knew she couldn't take the weight of responsibility off his shoulders, but wanted to help him forget about it, at least for a while. While they started getting busy, he asked her why she was so loyal to him, considering all the angels of death have either died or disappeared. Was she not concerned she'd be next? But, thinking of the way he saved her life back then, she told Johan he was like a warm fire to her, and that it was natural to be drawn to a warm fire on a cold winter's night. He then pushed her onto the couch, giving her a night she wouldn't forget. The morning after, she saw a notice that a ship was detected on the coast. Johan knew it was Hyan. Levi told him it wasn't too late to stop all this, but he just responded by telling her to head back up to Seoul tonight. She couldn't understand why. She just wanted to be by his side, but he told her he didn't need her anymore and to get lost. Again, she was reminded of their first encounter. It was then he told her to hurry up and jump if that's what she wanted to do. She was at the edge because life at home was a living hell with her abusive father. She just wanted to end it all. She thought it was strange how she was mentioning this to someone she just met, but felt comfort in it. She managed to laugh, remembering on the TV shows, people passing by would always try to stop the person from jumping. His reaction was a bit unusual, but she thanked him for listening before she took the plunge. As she fell, she honestly hoped he'd be the one to rescue her. And just as she was about to give up those hopes, he came flying down, grabbing her by his arms, uttering, "Don't die," before they plunged. Coughing water up from the aftermath, she asked why he saved her, and he answered it was because she reminded him of himself. She would normally never disobey his orders, but swatting her getaway vehicle he had arranged, she planned to only head back once everything she needed to do was finished. She knew he didn't want her to leave, despite what he said, and gave the command to assemble all their forces to execute the plan. Vael told Untae earlier that Levi's ability was mind reading. She wasn't too particularly fast or strong, but he also had never seen her fight. There was an incident 3 years ago where a particularly strong angel of death also hated Johan, desiring to kill him to take both his power and money. But when that vampire had gone to a building where Johan would supposedly be alone, he was met with Levi, and whatever she did, she was the only one to leave that building, and the other vampire disappeared without a trace. Our protags couldn't afford to let their guard down around her. Arriving at the only lit hotel on the island, Hyan could smell a strong stench of blood, but entering in, it was completely empty. The two ended up splitting up, because Hyan didn't want Untae to wear himself out, so he would be searching for a way to rewire the building and get the electricity back on. When the lights came on, Hyan finally met with Levi, who had to brag a bit that Johan bought this whole hotel as a gift for her. Hyan was cold though, wanting to cut to the chase. telling Levy to lead her to her god, whom she loved so dearly. Levy refused, so Hyeon went to attack, but with Levy evading, Hyeon found she had disappeared. Hyeon ended up in a maze, getting completely lost, and discovered her hand was burning from acid. The doors she broke were subtly laced with it. Levy smirked. This wasn't a maze. It was going to be Hyeon's grave. Corridors went on, and rooms were identical to each other. Hyeon tried blasting through the wall, only to find more acid splashing her way. She then heard Levy tell her, "Did you really think I wouldn't have set up any traps?" But this voice didn't come from speakers. It was telepathy. Levy then hit a button, causing the hotel's sprinkler system to spray more acid. However, Hyeon made it out, thanks to Untae finding the layout of the building. Hyeon would then exit the elevator and be met with a hallway filled with vampires, whom she couldn't hypnotize because they were already hypnotized prior. Hyeon blasted through, needing to find Levy before she tired out. But the horde of vampires seemed endless. Then Levy would come out, ready to step up to the plate, and suddenly attack her own minions? Hyeon didn't understand until Ash revealed herself. No longer wanted to go by that name. She told Hyeon to call her Jinha instead. The two were now back to back. As she explained, a hot detective told her how to get here. Hyeon was about to get jumped, but flames suddenly hit the vampires in front of her, courtesy of Vael. This was the power of friendship. The three were planning to tag team and take the horde down. Jinha quickly changed back to Levy. That way, the vampires wouldn't attack her. Vael, of course, lit his opponents ablaze, and the two girls were having their fun going hand to hand. Vael then decided to show off his entire card collection, nearly igniting the whole room. But even then, more continued to swarm. So, Hyeon decided to unleash a bit of her true power and crush the floor to take out a bunch. Jinha was amazed she even survived fighting Hyeon before. Still though, the swarm kept coming. So, Jinha and Vael decided to take on the rest, leaving Hyeon to head towards where she needed to be. Hyeon sensed more vampires and decided to jump up to strike first, only to end up jumping onto Untae. He had taken care of some vampires on the way here. He began leading her to the 40th floor where Levy was, and when they got inside another elevator, she told him to promise they'd have a beer together at Han River after this was all over. His face then grew dark, explaining prior to this, he was always living in despair. He worked really hard to get a job at the vampire task force, never getting a good night's rest, but felt more powerless than ever because the situation never improved. She wondered why he was bringing this up, but he just grabbed her shoulders and told her, "Don't turn around," then explained the day he saw her smiling happily as she talked about giving food to her siblings, that he just wanted to keep that smile safe forever. She then looked back, and as blood dripped from his mouth, his last words were, "Let's have a few beers and stay up all night one day," before he passed out into Hyeon's arms. When her siblings asked Hyeon what love was, she confidently answered, "It's a basic universal human emotion that opens up personal relationships and allows for an exchange of personal values." Yunso whispered to Yerim that she was asking the wrong person, since Hyeon had never been in a relationship and didn't want her kicking Hyeon while she was already down. But Hyeon knew love was a luxury for someone like her anyways. She wondered if she even had the right to be loved. She had once been set up on a blind date by her friend and hurt deeply internally when he posed the question, "Would you rather date someone hideous or a hot vampire?" He admitted being disgusted that he even joked about something like that. She's always been alone. Even when people tried to invite her to eat with them, she always ate alone, gone for walks alone, watched movies alone. Things were fine for her. So what was the point of wanting more? That all changed when Untae came into her life. When he saved her from the protesters at school, she didn't understand him at first, especially finding out he was a detective looking to hunt vampires. They'd been through so much together at this point, and she now knew her feelings for him were no longer that of just a teammates. She kept picturing a future where they ate together, watched movies together, went on walks together, but now wondered if it was too late. She wept, holding his face, telling him she loved him more than she had words for, giving him a kiss filled with her blood, hoping he would stay alive. She needed that more than anything. She then set him down, promising to come back for him. Then, exiting the elevator on floor 40, she walked into a room completely surrounded by vampires, with Levy at the end of it. Hyeon began her assault on them, looking to finish in 3 minutes, saying she needed to go have a beer at Han River. Levy reflected on how it had been 10 years now since she met Johan. The day after he saved her, she was certain he wasn't human. It didn't make sense how he saved her like it was no big deal, and his hands were warm, even though it was freezing outside. She questioned if he was the Grim Reaper or a superhero, but was stunned, having tailed him, but found he'd suddenly disappeared. He appeared right behind, asking her why she wanted to know about him, then revealing his true form, told her he wasn't the knight in shining armor she thought he was. He bared his fangs, going for her neck, but paused to look at her face and see she was smiling. She wasn't sure what was going on, but knew one thing for sure. He must have liked her. Otherwise, she'd have drowned to death. Despite him telling her not to follow, she told him that since he saved her, he was responsible for her now. She wanted to go everywhere with him, offering to do housework like laundry and cleaning, and also anything else he wanted. She thought she'd never be hurt again if she was with him. When they were facing trouble against their Busan sect of vampires revolting against them, she offered to take care of it when no one else would, and came back bloodied with the head of their leader. He gave her a good job and invited her out to dinner with him. It was moments like these where he was subtly expressing his love for her. She never realized it before because she'd been so caught up with other things, but looking back, she had never seen him smile even once. She felt a new sense of purpose. She'd been the only one on the receiving end of that love that Johan, the person who saved her from hell, gave her. So she made it her goal to work hard and make him smile, thinking the more blood she spilled, the more he would love her. After a while, she finally got to see him smile, but the person he smiled at wasn't her. This made her vow to do whatever it took to destroy Hyon Park. She needed to destroy her. Sending more vampires to attack Hyon, Hyon commanded them to kneel, subduing them immediately. And after telling them to leave, she told Levy that the love she received from spilling other people's blood wasn't love. Levy clenched her fist, realizing Hyon had read her mind, and she shouted at Hyon, telling her to shut up. She began to attack as Hyon dodged, telling Hyon she understood nothing about her pain. But Hyon told her to get real, asking if Levy ever truly felt happy with Johan before blowing her back. Levy couldn't even comprehend the attack. She couldn't see it, and now she couldn't breathe. But still, she wasn't going to give up. She was prepared to show just how far she'd go for her love. She pulled out a button, explaining all the acid that was stored in this building was going to come pouring out onto them. Then, with an explosion, the hotel blew up. Hyon responded by smashing down on the floors beneath. Levy couldn't believe she was planning on smashing through 17 floors filled with acid just to get to Untae on the 23rd. But Hyon didn't care if she died. She just needed him to live. However, when she made it to where she left him, he was already gone. Vael then called out to her, explaining he already pulled Untae out. But Hyon didn't think she could make it out. In the aftermath, Levy called Johan, explaining she'd finished the mission, and that she'd go to him once she found Hyon's heart. She assumed she had won because of her desperation, but wondered why she felt upset, thinking of the look on Hyon's face. Hyon then rose up from the rubble, rhetorically asking why Levy still didn't know the answer to that. Hyon made it out safely, thanks to Vael's instructions that he got from Untae before he passed out again. With Levy calling Hyon a monster, she'd be met by an intense punch in the stomach that sent her flying with catastrophic force. Hyon was still demanding Nohan's location, and with still no answer from Levy, Hyon delivered an insane barrage. In this moment, where every part of her was being destroyed, Levy started to understand why she was so upset with Hyon. She saw her own love as incredibly pathetic compared to Hyon's selfless love. The reason she killed people might have had less to do with wanting to be loved by Johan, and more to do with thinking that she'd lose herself if she didn't. Her love was selfish in the end. Levy told Hyon to just kill her because she didn't even know where Johan was. So, Hyon sent her flying off the island, and as Levy began falling into the water, her only wish was to see him one more time. That's when he came flying in to save her, just like the very first time. She sobbed into his arms, asking why he kept her by his side. He answered that she reminded him of himself, and he didn't want her to live like him. Then, on her dying breaths, she asked to see his smile just once before it was over. She tried hard to ignore the fact that all he felt for her was sympathy, admitting that she's never once read his mind. She didn't have to read it to know who was on his mind. She was too scared to confirm her suspicions, but felt better now that she could see it for herself and make peace with her feelings for him. Hyon made her trek as blood dripped at her every footstep. Standing before Johan, she was ready for them to end this. He started laughing maniacally, telling her that once he consumed her heart, he was going to be broadcasted around the world at midnight and turn most of the population into vampires, where he would rule them. He was a little stunned seeing Hyan smirk. She explained she now knew what he was after. He didn't want to rule the world. He wanted to kill everyone. She thought about why he was acting this way, having no idea at first because of her feeling betrayed. He tried to deny this, but then she brought up his missing eye, causing him to tell her to stop. Hyan was angry with tears, asking if he really thought that was a good enough reason for him to kill all those people. He just wanted her to stop talking. He jumped with a massive flaming attack, but Hyan blew it away without even hitting him. She then grabbed him by the neck, reminding him he wasn't this bad before, asking what made him turn out like this. As she pounded him over and over, she wanted him to say something, any excuse at all. She realized something was wrong. He wasn't fighting back. There was something he wished he had told her. Did she understand what it was like living in hell? It felt like your lungs were filling with water, and you were in agony with every breath, that you couldn't escape no matter how hard you tried, dying slowly without even knowing why you had to go through this. At some point, his mother's boyfriend was beating him every day, trying to gaslight and say he was doing it for his benefit. Johan felt lucky on the days he wasn't beaten as hard as usual. His stepfather even planned to sell him off to an old lady in Busan once he was a little older. Back then, Johan thought it was normal for people to be drowning in debt. Seeing another father being affectionate towards his son, he wondered if there would ever be a day where he could experience that kind of affection. But as expected, hope was never on his side. The physical pain he experienced didn't compare to how sad he felt about his mother, never asking him where he got the money. Even at school, he was beaten by the older boys, getting ignored by his teachers when he wanted help. He often ran away from school because he thought he might die if he stayed. He wandered to find a place where nobody would recognize him. Then came a day when he finally met Hyan. This was the first time he met someone in the same situation as him. In the late evening, she offered him some candy because she felt sorry for him. She told him it was really good. He still didn't know why he smiled so much that day. He met up with her often after that, and felt the more time he spent with her, the more she was purifying him. Seeing what she was made him change his ways of thinking. He began to think that if he didn't let life break his spirit and started changing who he was, then things around him would change too. Then one day, the bullies would coerce him into coming to their place. Their leader wanted Johan to make them cheat sheets for midterms, since Johan was the top of their class. Unfortunately, the bullies were so stupid, they screwed it up, not changing how their answers looked, despite Johan warning them. And now, he received the reputation of being a sly kid who deserved to be beat up. It was around that time he started thinking that maybe he was already dead, and that he was actually living in hell and being punished for things he did before he died. Not long after, his mother passed away from alcoholism, and then he was placed in care of his stepdad, forced to become his slave. He got caught up in more dangerous situations day by day, delivering drugs on behalf of his father, since no one would suspect a kid. Then one day, a gang leader gave him a knife, commanding him to kill Hyan's family, or else he'd die. That was when everything changed. Hyan's parents took out the gang in less than a minute. Watching them, the first thought that crossed his mind was that he envied them. He wanted to be stronger too, because if he became strong, he wouldn't be bullied. The bullies eventually told him to bring them Hyan, but he stood his ground, fighting back for the first time in his life, losing his eye in the process. When Hyan found him, she cried and cried while he continued to wish he'd just been a little stronger. Coming to, having received her father's blood, his body felt great. This was the first time in his life that he realized what it felt like to be refreshed. He didn't know how to describe it, but saying he was reborn was probably right. He was ready to leave this place and start a new life. His days were supposed to be happy from then on. But taking care of stuff he had left at home and going to school to collect his things, he wasn't expecting to come face to face with his bullies again on a day where there was no school. He asked them to apologize for everything they did to him in the past, and the leader dropped before him to say sorry. Johan was overwhelmed by the heartfelt apology, until the boy looked up, saying he actually had the most fun bullying him. They all laughed together at Johan, causing him to lose it, and when one of them went to attack, Johan blew a hole in the boy's body. Johan wouldn't stop here. He wanted to kill everybody. He'd go to kill everyone that wronged him. He was disgusted with humanity. He'd rather rip them all to shreds. He one time overheard Hyan's parents mentioning that giving his blood would cause the vampires he made to die within 5 years. He didn't think much of it then, but at this moment, he could tell he needed more power. He did what he had to do to steal Hyan's father's heart, getting the power he wanted, but then realized the eye he once lost still looked the same. He needed to make it perfect. He needed the eye perfect to become stronger. He ran and ran, barely managing to find Hyan, wanting to eat her heart to become perfect. And with that, he was going to reduce humans to their worst desires and make them tear each other to pieces. But seeing her crying for her parents, reminding him of how well they treated him, how well she treated him, he stopped. He later threw up, thinking about how he betrayed the ones who saved him, but shortly began to bury the guilt with rage. He needed to become more depraved to prevent losing himself. Having read his mind, Hyan saw it all now, and told him despite this, no one was going to absolve him. He wasn't looking for redemption though. His aim was to execute his plan, no matter what. That's why he needed her heart. She shouted at him, ticked off by his statement, and he liked it better this way. He liked it better when she hated him. He came swinging at her, but she kicked him effortlessly with intense force. In the blink of an eye, she punched him in the face and delivered blow after blow for all the suffering he caused the people she cared for. She was going to finish him off until he mentioned the detective was dead. Johan had his eyes on every nook and cranny of this place. He could even project the scene into Hyan's head if she wanted. She then asked Vael about Untae using telepathy, and all she heard was Vael crying. She didn't want him to say another word, and roared, swinging at Johan, but he was able to dodge, knowing she was thrown off by Untae's death. He blasted back, but she blocked it, and he could see that telekinetic attacks wouldn't work on her. So he barraged with his fists, and they traded blows hand to hand. When he reached for her heart, she stopped it and crushed his arm. Seeing this was how he had killed her dad, she got more furious, then quickly dashed and slammed Johan into the ground, copying a technique she learned from Untae perfectly with devastating force. Her next punch was so intense, it shook the entire island. She then told Vael to head back to the mainland so she could take off her crown and use full force. You're reading this one right side up at least.
I always read books right side up. Huh? What's this?
What's what?
I've never seen anything like this before. Do you know what it is?
I'm not sure either.
I see. Hey, Johan?
Yeah?
Let's go see it together someday.
Now these two were clashing. The booms of their battle were so loud they could be heard off the island, and Vael and Jinha could see it, even sailing away. Johan's vision was fading. He knew his end was coming. There was still something he hadn't told Hyan yet. He felt he could finally tell her now, since she couldn't hear him anyway. He'd been waiting for the day to come, the day he could rip her heart out. He was desperate, because he would become perfect once he ate it. He wanted her power so badly, but couldn't stand the way he was acting when they'd finally come face to face. Seeing the way Untae was so friendly with her, his mind only became more of a mess. He had his chance to kill her then, but he hesitated. He's been hesitating this whole time. But why? Just because they were friends in their childhood? One side of him was vehement in his desire to kill her. The other side was resisting. He just felt he couldn't do it. It wasn't because he felt pity for killing her parents or jealousy towards Untae, but instead because of love. As she hit him hard enough to open the clouds to the starry night, he knew it didn't matter what the reason was. The fact didn't change that he was like a runaway train that was out of control, and that had led him to this moment. Lying panting with a chunk of his torso missing, he didn't have any intention of seeking forgiveness for his sins. Perhaps he was waiting for someone to stop him in his tracks. He suddenly became distraught, seeing a vision of her parents standing before him. But they weren't angry. They were telling him to come home and eat. They had lots of tteokbokki left. He could have as much as he wanted. However, he felt he couldn't take their hands. He cried, knowing he's committed too many sins, and apologized over and over. Hyan picked him up by the neck. I found out what it is, Hyan. It's called... He stopped to see she had fallen asleep on a stack of books. These flowers are known as camellias, and there are lots of them on Jeju Island. The island is too far away for us to get to right now, but let's go together when we're grown-ups. It's a promise. Getting blown in half, he wondered if he had thought of her warm-hearted parents when things were tough, or if he had thought of her feelings towards him when he hated all of humanity. Then maybe they could have kept that promise. Falling to the ground, Hyan knew it was finally over now. Now she was truly alone. She had avenged Father Michael, and now she was going to bring things to an end. A power like hers should have never existed in the first place. As she began to rip her heart out, a man she thought was Johan grabbed her from behind, telling her it wasn't over yet. Untae couldn't believe she forgot what his voice sounded like already, joking he was a little hurt. She couldn't believe it was really him, and that he wasn't dead. She started to cry when he held her close. He then thanked her for everything and finally gave her a kiss, and she closed her eyes, taking it under the beauty of the starlight. 3 years later, Yerim and Yunsu were bantering like usual. The builders came by today, saying the place was finished, and now they could move in. The place looked like a proper church now. Father Michael must be so happy in heaven. The siblings and Hyun's friends were thankful they could see a magic show that same night because of her. They just wished she had joined them. Vael's performances were absolutely amazing. He put on a variety of tricks, dedicating it to all those who had the courage to survive until today. And all the proceeds from today's show would go to the families who have been devastated by vampires. Afterwards, in his dressing room, he'd be met by "Freeze! Vael, or Wante Jong, you're under arrest for fraud." It was Untae messing around like he usually did. The two chatted about how surprising it was that things were pretty much all going back to normal, and that all the people who had turned into vampires became human again. He had actually discovered research on a cure for the vampire pills on the USB stick he had stolen from Johan. That was based on Hyun's blood. Having searched Johan's office thoroughly, they had also found no signs of preparations being made for a broadcast for turning humans into vampires. Turns out, Johan wasn't actually planning on doing that in the first place. Vael then went to pet Daniel, who had survived thanks to the transfusion back then. Vael then had to head out, since he needed to visit Jinha, making Untae tease, asking if the two were already dating. Daniel would then happily offer his doll to Untae, but of course, he couldn't take it. Where Jinha was working in jail, she put on a performance so fierce, it put the newbie actor to tears. Sitting alone, she was informed of a visitor, and thought it was annoying, since he kept coming even though she told him not to. Untae, meanwhile, was picking out some flowers, looking pretty dashing with a full bouquet in his hand. Walking down the street where the citizens were happy and cheery, he was grateful to Hyun for helping create a world filled with joy. The night prior, a man was standing at the edge of a building, apologizing because he couldn't stand living anymore. When he jumped, Levi dashed to bring him safely to the ground. He asked why she saved him, and she only answered that he reminded her of herself. The boy cried, telling her he was suffering so much and didn't see the point of living. But as she walked away, she told him that even if life pulled him through hell, there'd always be at least one person out there who was on his side. A phone was crushed by the hands of a vampire who wanted to bring everything back under control of all vampires. The police force trembled before him as he shouted that vampires would never disappear. However, his anger would turn to fear, standing before the police's most prominent officer, Hyun Park. It's been 5 months already, and when she first took on the role, she was worried that she might not do a good job. But could now see it suited her more than she expected. She was still hiding her true identity, but things were different than before. She wasn't living in hiding while denying who she really was, or thinking she was a monster. The world went back to the way it used to be. The sirens didn't go off at night. The streets were full of people, even late at night, and she's made a lot of new friends. When she and Vael would go to visit Jinha, Jinha was quite surprised. Prison Girl was a little flustered, having done her hair only expecting Vael. Hyun could see something was going on between the two. She hoped Father Michael was smiling in heaven, and remembered when he first put the crown of thorns on her head, telling her it had a special power that would help her calm down. She knew it didn't really have any powers, but the thought of him placing it on her head calmed her. She could live without it now, and wanted to give it back to him. She smiled, seeing Untae made it, and with him standing before her, she wished she had introduced him to Michael sooner. With how good he looked in that suit, she wondered if today was a special day. He answered that he couldn't turn up empty-handed when visiting her father. Untae was so special to her. Taking their leave, the grave worker told her that Untae would often come by himself to visit Father Michael's grave. Hyun had no idea and rushed to Untae to hug him from behind, thanking him for everything. That evening, the two made it to the Han River. They were so busy, they hadn't visited the entire 3 years. They popped open their beers, giving cheers, finally having that drink they were talking about. Seeing a boy on rollerblades looking like he was about to fall over, the two dashed to save him, but he got caught by his father. So, the two fell over laughing with Untae on top of her. The moment was intimate, with their faces red. But Untae went in to kiss her, deeply and passionately, under the sunset. A little too passionate that Untae's hair color changed, maybe he needed to wear that crown of thorns. Calming down, he told her he had something to give her, and opening the car trunk, he showed that it was full of flowers for her. He thanked Hyeon for giving him a whole new life to live, and getting on one knee as he presented the bouquet, he asked her to spend the rest of his life with her. And she teared up as she answered, "Of course," embracing each other in this heartfelt moment. Later, Hyeon gave Hyeon a new jacket, then borrowed another one of Untae's motorcycles, so she could track down another vampire on the list, without Untae's permission. So Haeun promised to close her eyes, and with that, Hyeon would continue her days on the police force, making the world a better place every day. Man, what a nice ending to this series. One of the better written manhwas in my opinion. I feel like everything was resolved in a way that was pretty satisfying, and that there was a lot of depth to most of the characters. So many references to things in pop culture, like at the beginning where Hyeon is holding her shot glass like Leonardo DiCaprio, and the Naruto and Sasuke back and forth between her and Johan. Although I feel like Johan was written a little weak. It's clear the author was trying to make us sympathize with him and understand him, but I'm pretty sure with us getting introduced to him midway through the series, it didn't have the proper amount of time to weave him in. Unlike Naruto and Sasuke, who are together from the very beginning. But with how manhwa is written, forced to be in a one panel at a time format, I think that's always the biggest weakness that holds the stories in the medium back. But overall, definitely worth your time reading. I don't even believe I could really capture the whole essence of the story in this video, so I encourage you to read it yourself if you have the time. Like this video and subscribe for more content. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.